Chapter 746. Meng Jing was from the capital. Although he was not in Jianghu City most of the time, he still grew up in Jianghu City. Jianghu City was the capital of West Chu, and brides had always been brought in from outside. How could there be a girl from Jianghu City getting married outside the city? Moreover, the look in the groom's eyes did not seem to be that of a bridegroom, but more like a funeral procession. At this time, riding on the horse, Chu Xiu's expression was calm, and his heart was also calm. Although it was his first time being a groom in both his past and present lives, he was not in the mood to be excited at the thought of killing someone. Mei Qinglian, who was sitting in the sedan chair, was probably full of murderous intent. In fact, at the beginning, Chu Xiu did not intend to make it so complicated. Although in the eyes of outsiders, Chu Xiu was cunning and ruthless, in fact, Chu Xiu preferred simple and direct methods. He only used tricks to save some effort. Originally, Chu Xiu planned to make the move inside the city. However, considering that there were too many West Chu masters in Jianghu City, it was possible that a large number of West Chu masters would be attracted before they could kill all of them. Therefore, he chose to make the location outside the city. However, the place outside the city could be seen at a glance. Other than some beggars begging at the door, there were only some small merchants and peddlers. It was impossible for Chu Xiu to disguise himself as them and ambush them. In fact, Chu Xiu, Mr. Liu, and the others did not care. It was just killing someone, so what was the difference between disguising themselves? However, Mei Qinglian strongly rejected it. In her words, she was such a beautiful woman. How could they be willing to let her disguise herself as a beggar and a peddler? Therefore, it was her idea to disguise herself as the bride. As for the groom, Xianxia was not familiar with her, so she was too embarrassed to be the groom. As for Mr. Liu, he was actually of the same generation as Mei Qinglian. It was just that he broke through the three-flower realm a little later and looked a little rushed, so he was more suitable to act as Mei Qinglian's father. Hence, Chu Xiu naturally took this position. At the very least, in terms of appearance, he was much better than Mr. Liu and the other demonic Dao cultivators, who were mostly ugly. At this time, the wedding procession had completely left the city. Meng Jing just glanced at them curiously and didn't say anything. The people from the Earth Demon Hall should be entering the city soon. He didn't have the leisure to care about the weddings of ordinary people. However, he had once been an inspector in the Guanzhong torture room, so he had developed an ability to read people. He always felt that there was something strange about this wedding procession. From top to bottom, there was not the slightest sense of joy. Right at this moment, Lin Baohuang suddenly heaved a sigh of relief and said, "They're here." In the distance, there was a group of people riding towards Jianghu City. There were about 100 of them, and they looked like a caravan. In fact, these people were the elites and higher-ups of the Earth Demon Hall. Because they were afraid that someone from the Hidden Devil clan would launch a sneak attack, they gathered halfway and disguised themselves as a caravan to enter the city. Seeing these people appear, Lin Baohuang could finally breathe a sigh of relief. These days, he had been very nervous, afraid that if he was not careful, he would be ambushed and assassinated. The identity of the Hidden Devil clan Xianxia had already been confirmed. With this person's battle record in the pugilistic world, Lin Baohuang had no confidence in winning. Most importantly, Xianxia was not the only one who came. According to Meng Jing's analysis, there were at least 4 martial arts grandmasters involved. If he were to be besieged by the 4 of them, he would be in grave danger. Just as Lin Baohuang was about to meet the caravan, the wedding procession also met the caravan head-on. Just as the people from the Earth Demon Hall were about to reprimand them to get out of the way, they saw the groom's figure move. The demonic aura around him soared into the sky, and his hands were like bows and arrows. An invisible primordial spirit arrow condensed and shot out with a loud bang. The soundless whistling sound made people's heads hurt, as if their primordial spirits were vibrating. The expression of the martial arts grandmaster from the Earth Demon Hall at the very front suddenly changed. He was unable to react to this sudden change at all. Only when the soul-destroying arrow arrived in front of him did he let out a furious roar and quickly retreat. A gray cyclone surged in front of him, containing a sliver of the power of his soul. He wanted to kill Chu Xiu's soul-destroying arrow. It was unknown whether Chu Xiu's luck was too good or bad, but the first martial arts grandmaster from the Earth Demon Hall he chose was proficient in primordial spirit defense techniques. Unfortunately, the martial arts grandmaster from the Earth Demon Hall was a little unlucky. His secret technique was enough to defend against most primordial spirit's secret techniques, but Chu Xiu's mental strength had already surpassed 90% of martial artists of the same level. The power of the soul-destroying arrow was even more domineering. When the arrow fell, the gray vortex exploded. The martial arts grandmaster immediately let out a muffled groan as blood flowed out of his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Taking a step forward, the powerful demonic aura around Chu Xiu's body fused with the blood qi. When the punch fell, it seemed like it was going to shatter the mountains and rivers. Everywhere it passed, the earth trembled. Its power was unparalleled. This punch seemed to be the heaven-extinguishing earth-annihilating killing punch, but it also didn't seem to be the heaven-extinguishing earth-annihilating killing punch. When Meng Jing saw Chu Xiu's punch, he couldn't help but spit out a name, Qinqing Di. In the entire West Chu, only Qinqing Di could blast out such a powerful and unparalleled punch. The martial arts grandmaster from the Earth Demon Hall had his mental strength severely injured by Chu Xiu. Although he was in a daze, he was still a martial arts grandmaster who had experienced hundreds of battles. His martial arts instincts were still there. At this critical moment, he formed a seal with his hands and a large amount of demonic aura rose from the ground. It was mixed with an extreme corpse aura, corroding the surrounding heaven-earth yuan qi and emitting a series of evil whistling sounds. However, under Chu Xiu's punch, regardless of whether it was demonic qi, corpse qi, divine arts, or secret techniques, they were all shattered by Chu Xiu's punch, which could be said to be crushing power. The martial arts grandmaster from the Earth Demon Hall spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated more than 10 steps. With every step he took, a huge pit exploded under his feet. Chu Xiu punched again. The demonic aura around him seemed to form a suit of armor under the support of the Nine Heavens Fiend golden body. The power was incomparably shocking. With a single punch, the martial arts grandmaster's arms were shattered. When the third punch landed, the martial arts grandmaster from the Earth Demon Hall was surrounded by a mist of blood. He took the initiative to burn his blood essence to fight with Chu Xiu, but under his last punch, he directly exploded into a mist of blood. 3 punches to kill a martial arts grandmaster. This could be said to be the ultimate crushing power. Even though Chu Xiu had launched a sneak attack, it still shocked Meng Jing. At the same time, he also guessed who this person was. The soul-extinguishing arrow had been used countless times by Chu Xiu. Such a signature martial technique, coupled with such terrifying strength, who else could it be but Chu Xiu? At this time, it wasn't that the other people from the Earth Demon Hall didn't want to help, but they had no way to do so. Not long after Chu Xiu made his move, they had already been entangled. This was because Mei Qinglian and the others had already made their move. Mei Qinglian turned into a demonic mist and rose from the bridal sedan chair. Wherever she passed, the great art of the enchantress was displayed to the extreme. Even her opponent almost fell into qi deviation on the spot. Mr. Lu's heavenly demon formless mystic technique was displayed. It was a combination of illusion and reality. It was strange and incomparably domineering, making it difficult for the opponent to grasp it. As for Shenxuaning, his attacks were more like Chu Xiu's. Direct and efficient, ruthless and decisive. His baleful demon sword was almost always stained with blood. In just 3 moves, he had nearly pierced a hole in his opponent. If not for the fact that there was another person who caused Shenxuaning to fight 1 against 2, he might have already killed one person like Chu Xiu. The other martial artists of the Hidden Devil clan also attacked the other people from the Earth Demon Hall. But their numbers were small, less than a third of the opponents. In addition, because of their own strength, they were not as powerful as Chu Xiu and the others. At this time, Lin Baohuang was stunned by the scene in front of him. He had always thought that with the arrival of the other people from the Earth Demon Hall, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. He did not expect that this was just the beginning of the massacre. At this time, in the crowd, Chu Xiu also saw Lin Baohuang on the other side. The corner of his mouth revealed a cold smile as he walked towards Lin Baohuang step by step. At the same time, he directly clenched his hand. Wherever he passed, the martial artists of the Earth Demon Hall who were below the unity of heaven and man realm all fell to the ground with pale faces, as if their souls had been sucked out. This was the power of the great soul-searching hand of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth. It was simply a weapon that could not be countered. Lin Baohuang wanted to escape. But the Hidden Devil clan had set up such a big trap to ambush him. How could they let him go so easily? However, Lin Baohuang was puzzled as to why the people from the moon-worshipping cult had not appeared yet. This was Jianghu City, so there would definitely be people from the moon-worshipping cult stationed here. He had also sent people to the moon-worshipping cult headquarters to ask for help, but there was no news at all. So Lin Baohuang could only look at Meng Jing and shouted, "Sir Meng! What are you waiting for? Quickly send a signal and gather the experts of the West Chu Imperial Hall and the military to kill this group of demon path villains." Meng Jing paused for a moment. He did not directly send the message, but instead asked Chu Xiu, "Official Chu, I know that you have a grudge with the Earth Demon Hall. To be precise, it should be with your entire Hidden Devil clan. But that was only a matter of a few hundred years ago. Isn't it a bit too late for you to take revenge now? Is it worth it to waste so much effort to take revenge for a few generations ago? And this time, Official Chu, you have also killed a lot of people. Your anger should have been vented enough. Then can you stop killing, otherwise it will be good for everyone's face." Chu Xiu chuckled and said, "Face? Not making a move in your Jianghu city is already giving face to the imperial court. Right now is the time of the righteous and demonic war. It is best for the imperial court to stay out of the disputes of the Jianghu. Otherwise, it will be implicated and the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. This is something that no one wants to see. Sir, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't interfere in this matter. The Earth Demon Hall is just a watchdog that your West Chu Imperial Court has taken Indiana. If the dog dies, at worst, you can just change it. If it implicates the owner because of a dog, it is not worth it." After spitting out the last sentence, the smile on Chu Xiu's face disappeared and his tone was cold. Chapter 747. Although the underworld and the imperial court were opposed to each other, they were not always hostile. And it was not certain who had the upper hand in terms of high-end power. It was just that Chu Xiu dared to threaten the people of the West Chu Imperial Court, which was extremely bold. Of course, Chu Xiu was also picking on the weak. If he was facing the Eastern Qi and the Northern Yan Imperial Court, Chu Xiu wouldn't dare to say so. The strength of the West Chu Imperial Court was here. They would never be willing to fight with the Yinma clan for an Earth Demon Hall. Before waiting for Meng Jing to reply, Chu Xiu had already made his move. A fist with soaring killing intent and demonic qi fell straight towards Lin Baohuang. Meng Jing, who was beside him, also subconsciously dodged to the side with an angry look on his face. Although he was angry at Chu Xiu's arrogance, he really couldn't make a move. He had already reported the matter of the Earth Demon Hall to the Imperial Court. The Imperial Court's intention was to act according to the circumstances. It was very simple. If the Yinma clan didn't use too much power, then the Imperial Court would help. On the contrary, if the Yinma clan used too much power, then the West Chu Imperial Court also didn't want to get involved in the personal grievances between the demonic sections. Just when Chu Xiu and others made their move, Xing Situ and others were still searching aimlessly in the city. The spy division was also a secret department of the West Chu Imperial Court. If they could find out so easily, it would be too careless. In addition, Xing Situ and others didn't want to make a move in Jianghu City, so their speed was even slower. This was also because the martial artists who chose to follow Xing Situ were slightly dissatisfied. Immediately, a middle-aged martial artist who was also at the real pellet state complained, "I say, Xing Situ, is your plan reliable? For so many days, we have been wandering in Jianghu city. When we find them, the war between the righteous and demonic sects will probably be over. Xing Situ snorted coldly, I didn't ask you to follow me? If you regret joining the other side now, you probably can't even find them. Just as the martial artist was about to fly into a rage, he felt a burst of stellar energy coming from outside the city. That was definitely the fluctuation that could only be caused by the fight between several real pellet state martial Dao masters. In an instant, the crowd seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Xing Situ. Just now, you said that Chu Xiu was nowhere to be seen, but in the end, Chu Xiu had already set up a trap and made his move. Xing Situ's face reddened slightly, but he immediately shouted, don't just stand there. If we don't act now, we won't even get any leftovers. The group of people looked at each other and immediately rushed out of the city. At this time, within the Miaojiang's moon-worshipping cult, a martial Dao grandmaster from the Earth Demon Hall personally brought some people here to ask for help. The Earth Demon Hall now only had 7 martial Dao grandmasters left. This kind of strength was not weak, at least far exceeding most of the top sections. Apart from being unable to compare to the major forces with the true fire spirit refinement realm, the Earth Demon Hall really did not fear the other sections. It's just that compared with their peak, the current Earth Demon Hall was already very weak, and the martial artists of the Earth Demon Hall knew that they must ensure that their strength was not weaker than others. If other sects were weak, they would only slowly decline, but in the process, there might be a chance to turn things around. But the Earth Demon Hall was different. Because their strength was weak, the only outcome waiting for them was death. Therefore, the entire Earth Demon Hall was extremely sensitive to things about the Yinma lineage. After receiving the news, he, the martial Dao Grandmaster, came in person to show his sincerity. Over the years, the Earth Demon Hall had always been respectful to the moon-worshipping cult, and filial piety was indispensable during festivals. And unexpectedly, the one who came to receive him this time turned out to be Dong Wang Tai. Since the Battle of Fuyu Mountain, the name of the moon-worshipping cult's Dong Wang Tai was known to the world. In the hearts of the people of Jianghu, Dong Wang Tai's position was even second to Yi Shaonan, so at this time, seeing that Dong Wang Tai personally came to greet him, the Earth Demon Hall martial Dao Grandmaster felt a little flattered. Greetings, Lord Dong Wang Tai. The Earth Demon Hall martial Dao Grandmaster bowed respectfully to Dong Wang Tai, then hurriedly said, Lord, those mad dogs of the Yinma lineage took advantage of the fierce battle between the moon-worshipping cult and the righteous path to slaughter our Earth Demon Hall. Our sect has already lost several elites of the unity of heaven and man realm to the other side. Please give us justice, Lord. Dong Wang Tai nodded in understanding and said indifferently, all right, I understand. You can go. The Earth Demon Hall martial artist was stunned. That was it? That was a little too direct and efficient. In the past, the people who received him were the other members of the 9 great divine Magispriests. Most of them would even chat with him, or have some instructions and so on. But this Lord Dong Wang Tai was good, sending him away with a single sentence. Then, was the moon-worshipping cult going to interfere in this matter or not? When were they going to make a move? The martial artist wanted to ask these questions, but he didn't dare to. This was also the first time he had come into contact with Dong Wang Tai. Only God knew if the other party had such a personality. If he asked too many questions, would he anger him? But just as he was about to leave, pitch-black demonic flames rose from his feet. The demonic flames burned Gang Qi and Yuan Shen. It had been burning for several breaths of time before the martial artist sensed it. He mobilized all the Gang Qi in his body to resist, then turned around and shouted angrily, why, just as he finished speaking, the Eastern Emperor Tai Huang formed a seal with one hand, and the demon flame flourished. In an instant, the martial artist was burnt to ashes from head to toe, leaving only his head that fell into the ashes. His eyes were still wide open, as if he had died with grievances. Dong Wang Tai clapped his hands, and Hilghost, one of the 9 great divine Magispriests, walked in. He didn't even glance at the corpse on the ground. Pointing at the head on the ground, Dong Wang Tai said blandly, send this to the Hidden Devil clan. Think of it as an extra gift for them. Tell them not to hide it when they attack. Mountain Ghost put away the head on the ground and nodded. He suddenly asked, Your Excellency, the sect leader is not here at such a critical moment. If the people from the righteous sects were to attack us, wouldn't we have no room to resist for a while? Dong Wang Tai abruptly raised his head to look at Hill Ghost. He stared at him until Hill Ghost started to panic. Just as he was about to open his mouth to ask, an explosion suddenly rang out in the void. Hill Ghost was sent flying by an invisible slap, and blood immediately flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Dong Wang Tai looked at Hill Ghost with a gloomy gaze and said coldly, Who are you to question the sect leader? What do you know? Only a moon-worshipping cult with a sect leader is the true moon-worshipping cult. The sect leader left precisely because he wanted to attract the peak forces of all the righteous sects to him. If the sect leader stays here, what will happen if a fight breaks out? The thousands of years of foundation of our moon-worshipping cult will be completely destroyed. Look at the current Kunlun mountain, not even a single tile of the Kunlun devil cult can be found. Dong Wang Tai took a step closer to Hill Ghost's face, and said expressionlessly, This time, I'll take it that you've said something wrong and lost your mind. Remember, no matter what, you can never question the sect leader. Otherwise, even if you don't want to take the position of Hill Ghost, there are plenty of people in the moon-worshipping cult who want to take it. The 9 great divine Magispriests are just a title. Apart from me, it doesn't matter who the other 8 are. With that, Dong Wang Tai moved and disappeared from the room, leaving behind Hill Ghost, who was drenched in cold sweat and still had lingering fears. At this time, he didn't even dare to resent Dong Wang Tai, because at that moment, he really felt that Dong Wang Tai had killed him. No one knew what was happening in the moon-worshipping cult for the time being. At this time, in Jianghu, Lin Baohuang couldn't care less about when the moon-worshipping cult would come to save them. At this time, he should be thinking about how to escape from the hands of Chu Xiu. The shadow of a tree, the name of a person. In the past, Chu Xiu appeared as a dark horse among the younger generation in Jianghu. Everyone recognized him because he and Zhang Qingzhen were indeed unparalleled among the younger generation. After Chu Xiu killed Fang Jinwu, Chu Xiu's reputation had even surpassed that of Zhang Qingzhen. It was enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with those experts who were ranked at the top of the list. Lin Baohuang didn't pay much attention to Chu Xiu. It was only because the other party was a member of the Yinma clan that he subconsciously learned some information about Chu Xiu. He thought that the information was exaggerated enough. Who would have thought that after fighting with him today, he would know that Chu Xiu himself was even more exaggerated than what was described in the information? From his own strength to combat experience to martial arts, and even some of his understanding of martial arts, it was far beyond that of a senior who had been promoted to martial arts grandmaster for decades. Under the fierce attack, Lin Baohuang didn't want to hold on anymore. He just wanted to escape. Only by staying alive could the Earth Demon Hall survive. If he died, it wouldn't take long for the Earth Demon Hall to completely decline by relying on the other good-for-nothing disciples. So when he felt that he couldn't hold on any longer, Lin Baohuang's figure retreated while his hands formed a seal. Yin Qi rose from the ground, turning into a formation that completely enveloped Chu Xiu. A formation also appeared under his feet. His entire body seemed to melt into the soil. His figure completely disappeared, and even his aura was the same. The reason why the Earth Demon Hall was called the Earth Demon Hall was because of the Earth Demon Hall's secret technique. Burrowing into the ground wasn't as simple as burrowing into the ground with stellar energy. The Earth Demon Hall's burrowing secret technique was fusion. The sky was clear and the earth was turbid. It was like the power of yin and yang, one yin and one yang. The yin qi underground was exuberant and rich. When the Earth Demon Hall's cultivation method was to burrow into the ground and absorb the yin qi and demonic qi underground to cultivate. When in battle, one could also melt into the ground and be silent. It was most suitable for sneak attacks and assassinations. In the past, the Earth Demon Hall was able to sneak attack so many Kunlun devil cult martial artists. One reason was that they really didn't expect the Earth Demon Hall to betray them. The second reason was because the Earth Demon Hall's burrowing secret technique was indeed outstanding in sneak attacks. Chapter 748. When the Earth Demon Hall was at its peak, it was the Kunlun Devil Cult's main hall of assassinations. Now, although it had reached the point where it had to use its special skills to escape, and although it was a little embarrassing, at least it had the hope of staying alive. Unfortunately, this hope didn't last long before it was completely extinguished by Chu Xiu. Looking at the ground where there was no aura coming from, Chu Xiu sneered. It had to be said that the Earth Demon Hall's tunneling technique was indeed very mystical. Even with Chu Xiu's mental strength, he was unable to detect even the slightest bit of aura. It was as if the entire region was concealing Lin Baohuang. But it didn't matter if he couldn't find it. When power reached a certain level, it was enough to crush everything. Chu Xiu formed a Buddhist seal with his hand and used the sun-changing technique. The shadow of Vairocana bloomed behind him, and all the power in his body turned into golden Buddha's light, illuminating the area. Vairocana's palm fell, instantly shattering the ground. The golden Buddha's light also surged into the ground. After more than 10 palm strikes, the ground was a mess, and cracks were everywhere. But at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly discovered that the Buddha's light in one place was being melted by power. The corner of his mouth immediately curled into a cold smile. Found it. Mahavairocana's silhouette did not strike out with his palm. Instead, he formed a Buddhist seal with his hand and unleashed the colorless fixing palm mudra. The power began to distort and the land in that area began to churn. In the end, a figure wrapped in demonic chi was forcibly pulled out and slammed into the ground, coughing up blood. The power of the primordial spirit condensed into arrows, and the soul-destroying arrows shot out as if they were free. No matter how Lin Baohuang tried to block them, there was still a part of his mental strength that exploded in his mind, causing him to bleed from his orifices. His aura was extremely weak. Taking a step forward, Chu Xiu quickly rushed toward Lin Baohuang, ready to finish him off once and for all. But at this moment, a black and a red demon sword suddenly flew over from afar and slashed at Lin Baohuang. Chu Xiu snorted coldly and changed the direction of his fist, sending the two demon swords flying. However, the baleful demon chi on the two demon swords was not dispersed. They slashed into Lin Baohuang's body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. However, he did not die. Xing Situ roared, "Chu Xiu! What are you doing? Don't tell me you want to protect the life of this traitor of the demonic path?" Chu Xiu did not answer him. Instead, he reached out with a single hand, and a pressure from his soul erupted. He used the full power of the soul-searching hand of apocalypse and earth-destroying. Lin Baohuang let out a pained howl, but he failed to stop the power in the end. All of his soul was directly extracted by Chu Xiu, and his face immediately paled. He collapsed to the ground, no longer breathing. In fact, Chu Xiu's soul-searching hand of apocalypse and earth-destroying didn't have much effect on martial arts grandmasters. It couldn't kill them, but it could only harass them. Although Lin Baohuang was tenacious enough, he was first hit by Chu Xiu's sun-changing art, then his soul was severely injured by the soul-destroying arrow, and then he was severely injured by the baleful demon chi on Xing Situ's 9 and Red Abyss demon swords. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight, so he could not resist Chu Xiu's soul-searching hand. Looking at the exasperated Xing Situ, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Nothing much. We definitely have to kill him, but we also have to see who gets to do it. We've spent so much effort to find someone to set up a trap and assassinate him, but you, Xing Situ, want to take advantage of us? How can there be such a good thing in the world?" At this time, Shen Xuaning and the others had also finished off their opponents from the Earth Demon Hall. The martial arts grandmasters sent by the Yinma clan were all experts among experts, and almost none of them were nobodies. Their strength was already a notch higher than that of the Earth Demon Hall, so it wasn't difficult for them to finish off their opponents now that they had gone all out. Seeing Xing Situ and the others arrive, Chu Xiu's people also gathered around them, faintly confronting them. The smell of gunpowder was thick between the two sides. Meng Jing, who hadn't made a move all this time, only standing at the city gate and watching the battle, was now nervous. What the hell were these guys from the Yinma clan doing? Why did it seem like they were fighting each other? It didn't matter if they fought among themselves, but they couldn't let the imperial court get involved. At this time, Xing Situ's people were also looking at the corpses of the Earth Demon Hall martial artists on the ground, a trace of confusion in their eyes. This time, it was clear that the old ancestors of the Hidden Devil clan were here to give them benefits. Although the Earth Demon Hall wasn't weak, without the protection of the moon-worshipping cult, any one of the ancestors from the Yinma clan at the True Fire Spirit Refinement Realm would be able to slaughter them all. The reason they were sent here was actually to give them some benefits for free. But now, Xing Situ and his people acted as if they were on vacation. They'd been here for nearly a month, wandering around Jianghu city without so much as a hair on their heads. Finally, they heard some movement, but in the end, Chu Xiu's side had already taken care of them. How could they be satisfied with this? At the same time, Chu Xiu's people were also looking at the opposite side with vigilance. During this period of time, they'd gone through a lot of effort to find a trap, ambush, and kill. Only then did they get rid of all the traitors of the Earth Demon Hall. You didn't do anything, and you want a share of the spoils? What right do you have? Xing Sita glanced at the people around him and suddenly sneered. Chu Xiu, do you want to take all the spoils for yourself? Among the people present, no one had gained anything. How could they be willing to leave just like that? Don't worry about scarcity, but worry about inequality. This was the mentality of all people. They didn't care how much you'd paid. Why did you get all the benefits while I didn't? Mr. Lu pulled Chu Xiu's arm and secretly transmitted his voice to him. Calm down. It's not good for you to fight with this guy here. He's just a rogue cultivator with no family business foundation. It's fine if he falls out. If you fight, it's equivalent to offending a lot of the Hidden Devil clan's branches. It's not good for you. Mr. Lu knew Chu Xiu's character. He was afraid that if he went crazy, there would be another internal strife in the Hidden Devil clan. That would not only be a joke, but it would also affect Chu Xiu's reputation in the Hidden Devil clan. Offending Yuan Tianfang was not a big deal, but offending more than half of the Hidden Devil clan's branches was a big deal. Although with Wei Shi's protection, he wouldn't let the other big shots of the Hidden Devil clan attack Chu Xiu. But in the future, Chu Xiu would face a lot of trouble. That was what Xing Situ was thinking. If Chu Xiu refused to take a share, he would not only offend him, but also offend all the warriors of the Hidden Devil clan on his side. If Chu Xiu agreed, he wouldn't get any benefits either. The people on his side would definitely blame Chu Xiu for handing over the benefits that he had already obtained. Unless Chu Xiu was willing to take nothing, then the interests of both sides could be appeased. But if that happened, he would be the one to suffer losses. So it was a dilemma. Looking at Xing Situ, Chu Xiu suddenly smiled and said, I, Chu Xiu, have never had the habit of eating alone. If you are willing to follow me, I've said that as long as you are obedient, you will get benefits. Unfortunately, you didn't choose me. As soon as he said this, everyone present regretted it. If they had known that Xing Situ was so unreliable, they would have chosen Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu was famous in the Jianghu, Xing Situ's foundation in the Hidden Devil clan was deeper than Chu Xiu's, and he had a lot of connections. Moreover, Chu Xiu was too young. How could the warriors of the previous generation trust Chu Xiu so easily? Of course they would choose the more reliable Xing Situ, but who would have thought that Xing Situ was not as reliable as they thought? But at this time, Chu Xiu changed the topic and said, but some things have to be given a chance. I, Chu Xiu, am not an unreasonable person. As he said this, Chu Xiu directly took out the jade seal that Qi Yuanli had given him and said, this records all of the Secret Intelligence Division's branches in West Chu. The information was given to me by Wind Sweeping Building, so it can't be wrong. Right now, the Earth Demon Division's high-level elites have all been killed by me, and the others left behind in the divisions are not worth a single blow. As long as you are willing to make a trip, you will be able to easily deal with them and obtain the remaining items in the divisions. As soon as they heard this, everyone's eyes lit up. For those on Xing Situ's side, although they knew that the real good things were in the hands of Lin Baohuang and the other high-level members of the Earth Demon Division, it was impossible for them to bring everything with them. There were definitely many good things in the divisions, so it wasn't a loss for them to take those. As for those on Chu Xiu's side, it was enough for them to obtain the immediate benefits. If they wanted to obtain the other things in the divisions, they would have to make another trip. The most important thing was that the information belonged to Chu Xiu, so he could give it to whoever he wanted. As long as their own interests weren't at stake, they didn't care too much. Xing Situ's face darkened. He didn't think that Chu Xiu would be able to solve the situation with such a simple trick. But at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Any one of you can take this, but the condition is that you cannot give it to Xing Situ. Otherwise, I don't mind taking people to rob it again." Xing Situ's face darkened, but the martial Dao grandmasters around him looked at each other and walked out. They took the jade seal one by one, memorized the information, and turned to leave. Others might have some misgivings about Xing Situ, but they didn't. They were all senior members of the Yinma clan. They were either backed by true fire masters of the spiritual refinement realm, or, like Mei Qinglian, came from a powerful branch of the Yinma clan in the past. They had a strong background and status, so they didn't have to be afraid of him. Seeing this, the other martial artists who had not reached the martial Dao Grandmaster realm also walked out. In a short while, Xing Situ was alone except for his good friend, Si Kuang, Ying Dao Exalted Master. In fact, Si Kuang also wanted it, but he wasn't a member of the Yinma clan. If he wanted it, Chu Xiu wouldn't give it to him, and the others wouldn't agree either. Xing Situ looked at Chu Xiu with a gloomy face, but in the end, he didn't say a word. He just turned around and left. Looking at the strength of both sides, he knew that he couldn't beat them. Even if he left any more harsh words, it would just be a joke. He might as well just leave. Chapter 749. Xing Situ left angrily. It was time for Chu Xiu and the others to split the loot. Of course, Chu Xiu and the others still had some sense of propriety. They did not search the corpse in front of Meng Jing. That would be too disrespectful to the West Chu Imperial Court. They directly moved the corpse to a place outside the city, and then began to rummage through it. The treasures that those fellows obtained from the Kunlun demon sect back then should have been brought along with them. However, no one knew how many of them were left. These things were given to the moon-worshipping cult by the Earth Demon Hall. Over the years, they must have consumed a lot of them. What was left were either useless or temporarily unusable, but they were definitely treasures. Chu Xiu and the others would naturally be responsible for dividing the items on the bodies of the martial Dao grandmasters. As for the items on the other Earth Demon Hall martial artists, they would be divided by the other Hidden Devil Clan martial artists. There were a total of 6 people, and there were quite a lot of things found on them. There was the Earth Demon Hall's own secret technique, the Earth Escape technique, and other cultivation techniques passed down from the Kunlun Devil cult. There were also some rare materials, pills, and even weapons. It was a broken sword. Although it looked very ordinary, not even a divine weapon, it was a broken sword. Of course, it might have been a divine weapon before, but it was not now. But the broken sword exuded an extremely fierce aura. Even when it was placed on the ground, a layer of frost formed and the vegetation withered. Shen Xuaning's eyes lit up. "I want this sword. Does anyone have any objections?" The people present did not use swords, so of course they had no objections. Chu Xiu did not speak at this time. He just stared at one thing. It was a very strange thing. It was round, scarlet, and there was no aura on it. It looked like an ordinary gem. But this thing was found on Lin Baohuang's body, and the secret box that contained it was made of extremely precious deep-sea black iron. The array on it had been resealed to protect this thing. What Chu Xiu really cared about was the feeling. The moment he saw it, Chu Xiu's heart was filled with desire. He wanted this thing. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly said, "I want this thing." The people present all looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. Obviously, they also did not recognize what it was. Of course, at this time, no one would fight with Chu Xiu. If they didn't recognize the treasure, it would be their own fault. They couldn't blame Chu Xiu for being too smart. After distributing the items, everyone planned to go back first, but they happened to run into Chu Wuji, who was halfway there. "You don't need to rush back for now, Old Wei and the others are rushing over to West Chu." Chu Xiu's expression froze as he asked, "Are the righteous sects ready to take action?" Chu Wuji nodded and said, "Yi Xiaonan is refining a demon weapon on the Broken Intestine Cliff at the edge of the 100,000 Mountains. It is said that this is a weapon embryo left behind by the ancestors of the moon-worshipping cult. Once it is completed, it will be comparable to the complete version of the Kunlun Devil cult's 3 great demon weapons. Yi Xiaonan has already done this brazenly. Do you think the others can still sit still? The battle is about to start, we need to make preparations. It doesn't matter if the moon-worshipping cult can't win this battle, we just need to make sure they don't lose too badly." Chu Wuji said this. In fact, the key to this battle was not them, but rather the Broken Intestine Cliff and Yi Xiaonan. If Yi Xiaonan won, the moon-worshipping cult would win. If Yi Xiaonan lost, the moon-worshipping cult would also lose. Hearing Chu Wuji's words, Chu Xiu was very interested in Yi Xiaonan's battle. This was a powerhouse ranked on the sovereign list. To be able to see a powerhouse of this level in action, it could be said to be a rare opportunity. It was a pity that even if Chu Xiu rushed to watch the show, he couldn't, because watching this kind of show would kill him. In the eyes of ordinary martial artists, the cultivation of the true pellet state was already the peak. It was a grandmaster-level character who could establish a sect. But in the eyes of a powerhouse like Yi Xiaonan, who had reached the heaven and earth mysterious realm, he was no different from an ant. The heaven and earth mysterious realm, dancing in the air, was already like an immortal god. There were no real immortals or Buddhas in this world. The powerhouses of the heaven and earth mysterious realm were the gods and Buddhas of this world. Watching the battle of powerhouses of this level, a single shockwave could easily kill someone. Back to a few days ago, in the Great Light Temple. Su Du was holding his wine gourd, sipping it. This time, his wine gourd was really filled with water, not wine. At this time, Su Du really wasn't in the mood to drink. The righteous and demonic war was about to break out. He also wanted to go to West Chu, but unfortunately, someone had to stay in the Great Light Temple. Just like the restless Chu Xiu, if he wasn't there and no one in the Great Light Temple could control him, he could overturn the sky of the northern Yen Jianghu. At this moment, in the central courtyard of the Great Light Temple, a beam of Buddha's light shot into the sky. In an instant, the golden Buddha's light dyed the originally gloomy sky gold and jade. The sound of Buddha's chanting fell from mid-air, as if Buddha had descended. In mid-air, the clouds that were dyed gold actually began to surge. In the end, they actually gathered into a giant Buddha that was tens of thousands of feet tall. It hovered in mid-air with a dignified appearance, overlooking the world. Su Du's wine gourd fell to the ground, but he didn't seem to notice it. He looked at the sky in disbelief and mumbled, "Senior Abbot, you've broken through?" All this time, the most famous of the high-level martial artists in the Great Light Temple had always been the first seat of Raging Thought Zen Hall, Su Yun. Among the martial artists of the Su generation, Su Yun's talent was also the highest and the most stunning. It was even publicly acknowledged in the Jianghu that Su Yun's strength was unfathomable. Among martial artists of the same level, no one could force Su Yun to use his full strength. Compared to Su Yun, Su Ci, the abbot, seemed to have no sense of existence. Even the entire Jianghu did not know why the previous abbot had chosen Su Ci to be the abbot, and Su Yun had not fought for the position. Over the years, many people said that Su Ci did not live up to his title as abbot and was inferior to Su Yun. In the face of these rumors, Su Ci had never been angry. It was just that he spent most of his time cultivating in seclusion. However, in the eyes of others, he was purely running away, afraid that someone would compare him to Su Yun. However, only people like Su Du, who were close to Su Ci, knew that Su Ci was not inferior to anyone else. Looking at Su Ci's appearance and feeling his power, how could Su Du not know that Su Ci had already stepped into the heaven and earth elemental realm? He was strong enough to be ranked on the Jianghu supreme ranking. As long as Su Ci walked out of the Great Light Temple with this strength, all the rumors would be destroyed. Su Ci truly deserved the position of abbot. The next moment, the golden Buddhist light dissipated, and the shocking Buddha also disappeared. An old monk wearing a red robe suddenly appeared in front of Su Du. He squinted his eyes and had a benevolent look on his face. "Junior brother Su Du, you've been secretly drinking again." Su Du seemed to be shocked and quickly said, "I really didn't drink this time." "Senior brother abbot, look, this is water, okay?" Su Ci shook his head and said, "There's wine in your heart, so whatever you drink is wine. You've still broken the precepts." Su Du's face darkened, and he said speechlessly, "Senior brother abbot, why are you still playing games with me at this time? You've already stepped into the heaven and earth elemental realm?" Although Su Du already had a guess, he still had to wait for Su Ci to say it himself before he could rest assured. Su Ci nodded and said, "I've stepped into it. This realm is like a door. If you push it open, you can enter. If you can't push it open, and you forcefully smash the door, it will be locked even tighter." Su Du looked at Su Ci speechlessly. Senior brother abbot was still so strange after breaking through. Couldn't he say something easy to understand? "How's the moon-worshipping cult?" Su Ci asked. Although he was in seclusion, there were disciples reporting the situation outside his meditation room every day. Therefore, Su Ci had always been in control of the overall situation. Su Du thought about it and said, "There seems to be news that Yi Xiaonan left the moon-worshipping cult and went to Heartbroken Cliff to forge a demonic weapon. It's said that this demonic weapon is a weapon embryo left behind by the founding ancestor of the moon-worshipping cult. It's abnormally powerful. Many generations of moon-worshipping cult leaders have tried to successfully forge it, but they all failed. However, once it succeeds, its power will be comparable to the 3 demonic weapons of the Kunlun devil cult. Speaking of which, this Yi Xiaonan is quite interesting. He changed places to forge a weapon. The moon-worshipping cult is so big. Can't it accommodate him?" Su Ci looked into the distance and said lightly, "Yi Xiaonan is waiting for us. We haven't seen each other for so long. Has he really become so strong that he can go further than us in the sect?" Su Du was just about to ask what he meant when he saw Su Ci take a step forward. His figure was already in the air. He turned into a golden light and flew far away. Almost in an instant, he disappeared. Strictly speaking, flying in the air was something that only heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm cultivators could do. Martial Dao grandmasters could not fly in the air. It could only be said that they could jump higher and stay longer. Although true fire spiritual refinement realm cultivators could do it, they could not last long. True fire spiritual refinement realm cultivators used their own powerful gang chi to link with the surrounding chi of heaven and earth to achieve the effect of flying in the air. What was consumed was still their own strength. However, they were rich and could afford to consume it. Only when one reached the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm and comprehended the heavenly way with martial arts, would they become a part of the world. They could forcibly use their own strength to change the rules of the world around them and let the power of heaven and earth drag them to fly. This was true flying in the air. Su Du watched Su Ci fly away in a daze. Only then did he react. He quickly shouted, "Senior brother, wait for me. Take me with you." The scale of the battle between the righteous and demonic sects on Mdfuyu was simply too small. This was the biggest battle between the righteous and demonic sects ever since the Kunlun demon sect was annihilated. The scene would definitely be exhilarating, and Su Du naturally wanted to take a look at it. However, at this time, it was unknown whether Su Ci heard him or not. Anyway, the speed of a heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm cultivator was extremely terrifying. Almost in the blink of an eye, he had disappeared, leaving behind a dumbfounded Su Du. It was fine that Su Yun did not bring him, but Su Ci did not bring him either. In the end, he still ended up as a guard. Chapter 750. As soon as Yi Xiaonan made his move, the wind and clouds in Jianghu also surged. Within the eastern Qishang Rivering clan, in the deepest part of a loft, there was not a single window, and not a single ray of light could be seen within the loft. However, at this moment, the door of the pavilion suddenly opened, and an incomparably dignified aura was released, as if a sleeping dragon had opened its eyes. An old man wearing a robe embroidered with black dragons walked out. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The domineering aura he exuded was even stronger than that of the current hero, the northern Yan Xianlong. In front of him, a middle-aged man wearing the same clothes stood there. He also had a solemn expression and didn't have the slightest smile on his face. It was as if he was carved from the same mold as the ancestor. Ancestor, are you going to take action this time? Actually, my Xiangshui clan shouldn't have gotten involved in this matter. The old man said indifferently, Sanshu, you have to remember, there is nothing in this world that should or should not, only whether you want to do it or not. Righteous and demonic Tao? It's nothing more than a conflict of interests. It's all empty talk about getting rid of demons and defending the Tao. The moon-worshipping cult hasn't started to wreak havoc in Jianghu yet. Then why did you make a move? The old man gazed at the sky with a sharp glint in his eyes. 500 years ago, the Kunlun devil cult suppressed the world. The world only knew the name of Dugu Weiwei. After that, Ning Xuanji appeared out of nowhere and the world only remembered his name as an immortal. But who knew how many heroes and outstanding geniuses had arisen in those chaotic times? It is a blessing not to be born in the same era as them, but it is also a pity. At this point, the old man paused and said, Sanshu, I am old. Although the old man said that he was old, his figure was tall and straight, and his aura was strong. The sharpness in his eyes was even stronger than that of a young man. There was no sign of age at all. For the sake of clan, I'd been trapped in the Black Tower for 50 years. I'm afraid that the people of Jianghu have already forgotten my name. The next generation of the Ying family depends on you, but I don't want to die of old age in my bed. 500 years ago, I didn't manage to catch up with the rising heroes and the turbulent times, but this time, I don't want to miss it. Yi Xiaonan of moon-worshipping cult was the #1 demonic cultivator in the world after Dugu Weiwei. If I don't meet such a person, wouldn't I have wasted my time in this world? With that, the old man's figure turned into a black light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The middle-aged man shook his head gently as he watched the old man leave, but he didn't say anything. Meanwhile, in the real martial arts sect of Eastern Qi. In the True Force Hall, dozens of Taoist priests were sitting cross-legged. There were old Taoist priests, middle-aged Taoist priests, and a few young Taoist priests. The hall was filled with incense, like mist, and the atmosphere was extremely heavy. At the forefront, an old Taoist priest wearing a gray Tai Chi Taoist robe sighed and said, "The tree may desire peace, but the wind will not stop." Yi Xiaonan brazenly sacrificed a demonic weapon outside. He's forcing us to take action. Someone below advised, "Leader, in the past, when the Kunlun devil cult suppressed the world, it was our martial arts sect's patriarch Ning Xuanji who turned the tide. Since the patriarch disappeared, our real martial arts sect has been declining and has never recovered to its peak. Now that there's a problem, does our real martial arts sect have to sacrifice again? Leader, the Yi Xiaonan has already stepped into the heaven and earth mysterious realm. After mastering the Mend Heaven Heart Sutra, his strength is unfathomable. Even the old Taoist master and Sabodhi monastery's divine monk Rama were defeated by him. I'm not boosting the morale of others and diminishing our own, but if something happens to you, our real martial arts sect will suffer another blow." This old Taoist priest was the current leader of the real martial arts sect, Sage Xianxian Lu Changlu. Since Ning Xuanji's death, there hadn't been any outstanding figures in the real martial arts sect, including Lu Changlu. Although he was ranked 6th on the Fengyun list, he had fought his way to this position step by step. There was nothing legendary about his achievements in his life. The only thing worth mentioning about him was that the other disciples of the real martial arts sect were accepted into the sect to cultivate when they were young. He was the only one who started practicing martial arts in his 20s. Lu Changlu was just an ordinary scholar before he was in his 20s. However, he liked Taoism and was a devotee of the real martial arts sect. Because he was trapped by love, he entered the outer sect of the real martial arts sect in a rage and started practicing Taoism. The outer sect of the real martial arts sect only practiced Taoism and didn't practice martial arts. They trained ordinary Taoist priests. However, Lu Chengliu's understanding of Taoist scriptures alarmed the big shots in the inner sect of the real martial arts sect. Therefore, they made an exception and promoted him to an inner sect disciple. They started teaching him martial arts. However, Lu Chengliu didn't amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Instead, he walked step by step to his current position. He wasn't on the Longhu list when he was young, and he wasn't on the Fengyun list when he was middle-aged. Lu Chengliu only became the leader when he had entered the real fire spiritual refinement realm. Moreover, the previous leader and the older generation of martial artists had died. At that time, he had already become an old Taoist priest. His sixth position on the Fengyun list was not only because he had the strength of the real fire spiritual refinement realm, but also because he was the leader of the real martial arts sect. Sitting on this position meant that he had the strength to stir up a storm in the martial world. Most of the martial artists of the real martial arts sect present didn't want Lu Chengliu to fight. The real martial arts sect had already fought once. Now, the real martial arts sect didn't have the strongest martial artist on the supreme list. Even if the sky collapsed, there would be someone stronger to support it. The real martial arts sect used to be the strongest 500 years ago. However, it was no longer their turn now. Lu Chengliu sighed and said, when the patriarch was still alive, he didn't know if he could defeat Dugu Weiwei. However, he still went. Today, the real martial arts sect didn't have the confidence and retreated. The other sects also felt that they didn't have the confidence and retreated as well. After retreating, there's really no one left. Even if the sky collapsed, there would be someone stronger to support it. However, if the taller people chose to lower their heads, it would be useless no matter how tall they were. This time, the real martial arts sect must go. If we retreat, there will be loopholes in our hearts and we will lose face for the patriarch. You don't have to persuade me anymore. No matter what, I have to go. I will take the horsetail whisk left by the patriarch. Don't worry, I haven't lived long enough. I won't die. Although the Celestial Master Mansion had replaced the real martial arts sect as the leader of the Dao sects, the real martial arts sect still had a lot of heritage. The horsetail whisk that Lu Chengliu mentioned was left behind by Ning Xuanji in the past. There was a martial Dao imprint unique to Ning Xuanji on it. This horsetail whisk wasn't a divine weapon. The weapon spirit in it had dissipated after Ning Xuanji disappeared. However, as long as the martial Dao imprint in it worked, its power would be stronger than a divine weapon. Seeing that Lu Chengliu had made up his mind, everyone present shook their heads and stopped trying to persuade him. Lu Chengliu was a gentle person. He wasn't too aggressive when dealing with the real martial arts sect's affairs. However, everyone present knew that once Lu Chengliu made a decision, no one could stop him no matter how hard they tried to persuade him. When Lu Chengliu made his decision, the Sword King's city in the extreme west, which was opposite the real martial arts sect, also made a decision. However, unlike the real martial arts sect's reluctance, the Sword King's city took the initiative to make a move. At the moment, in the Sword King's city's main hall, the three true fire spirit refinement stage powerhouses of the Sword King's city were all present. One of them was the Jiannan King, Dugu Li, who had fought in the Righteous Path and Devil Path battle on Floating Jade Mountain. There was also a middle-aged man with an extraordinary aura. He was the city lord of the Sword King's city. He was ranked 4th on the reputation list, Heavenly King Shen, the Heavenly Sword. It was said that Heavenly King Shen's previous name was Shen Tian. After he became the city lord of the Sword King's city, people called him the Heavenly King Shen Tian. However, no one knew what he was called in the end. In the end, he was called Heavenly King Shen. However, it seemed more imposing this way, so Heavenly King Shen didn't mind. Instead, it became his name. The last person was a middle-aged man in black with a cold expression. The strangest thing was that his eyes were pitch black, and his body was emitting traces of death. He didn't look like a Righteous Path martial artist. Instead, he looked like a diabolism martial artist. This person wasn't famous in the pugilistic world. However, more than 20 years ago, he was a famous Sword King City expert. He was the previous hall master of the Form Sword Hall. His name was Meng Yanghe. Back then, Meng Yanghe was already ranked 30th on the reputation list. It wasn't too high, but it was definitely not low either. He was also considered the most outstanding disciple of the Sword King City's generation. He was also the martial artist who had the highest chance of entering the true fire spirit refinement stage. In the end, more than 20 years ago, Meng Yanghe suddenly disappeared without a trace. He passed the position of Hall Master to Bai Qian, who had just reached the martial Dao Grandmaster realm and hadn't even stabilized his cultivation. After not showing his face for more than 20 years, his name had long been removed from the reputation list. Everyone suspected that something had happened to Meng Yanghe. In reality, that was indeed the case. More than 20 years ago, Meng Yanghe accidentally found a sword that was born in the land of extreme Yin. He wanted to refine it, but something went wrong. It caused him to be trapped in the boundless Yin demonic qi and unable to escape. Even with Heavenly King Shen and De Li's help, he couldn't do it. In these 20-plus years, Meng Yanghe had exhausted all of his strength to refine the extreme Yin sword, but his body had also been invaded by the extreme Yin demonic qi, becoming neither human nor ghost. Although he had reached the true fire spirit refinement realm, only he knew exactly how much he had paid for it. Heavenly King Shen looked in the direction of West Chu and said in a low voice, "Yi Xiaonan is so courageous and charismatic. He has set up such a large force and treats all the powerhouses of the pugilistic world as nothing. How can the Sword King City be absent?" De Li frowned and said, "Yi Xiaonan is very terrifying. You've seen the power of the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm. He's not that easy to deal with." Heavenly King Shen said in a low voice, "Of course I know that a powerhouse of the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm is not easy to deal with. I also don't expect that we alone can defeat Yi Xiaonan. Yanghe, now that you've refined the sword of extreme Yin and stepped into the true fire spirit refinement stage, you can join forces with martial uncle Dugu and me. With the three of us driving the human king sword together, even if it's a powerhouse of the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm, we still have the power to fight. It's about time that the head of the 5 major sword sects was decided." Chapter 751. The human king's sword that Heavenly King Shen was talking about was the sword of a human king in ancient times. It should be said that it wasn't ancient times, but the ancient times of the ancient times. When the human race was still a tribe, a human king had forged a sword with the power of heaven and earth. It contained infinite power. Even the name of Sword King City was related to this human king sword. Unfortunately, the human king's sword was broken. However, even if it was broken, only the founder of Sword King City could wield it. It was said that the founder of Sword King City was a descendant of the human king of the past. With the latter's bloodline, he could wield the human king's sword. Now that Heavenly King Shen wanted to use the human king's sword, he could only gather the power of 3 true fire cultivators at the soul refinement stage and forcefully use it. The human king's sword was the root of Sword King City. It had only been used a few times in the past thousands of years. Every time, it was activated by blood sacrifice when Sword King City was in danger. Moreover, after so many years, the human king's sword had never left Sword King City, except for the founder. This time, Sword King City was actually prepared to use the human king's sword to deal with Yi Xiaonan. One could imagine how much courage Heavenly King Shen had put into making this decision. In just a few days, from northern Yan to eastern Qi, and then to West Chu, the entire pugilistic world had been stirred up by Yi Xiaonan alone. Now, even those who didn't care about the situation in the pugilistic world could feel a sense of urgency, as if a storm was brewing. West Chu, 100,000 Mountains, Broken Heart Cliff. Although this place was called Broken Heart Cliff, the scenery was beautiful. It made people feel relaxed and happy. There was no feeling of heartbreak. In fact, Broken Heart Cliff came from a poignant love story. In short, it was all kinds of heart-wrenching things. After hearing about it, people would cry that the heavens were unfair. In the legend, after the hero and heroine died, Broken Heart Cliff was covered in broken heart grass. This was a kind of beautiful but poisonous plant. It was one of the main feeding materials of moon-worshipping sects Broken Heart Gu. At that moment, Yi Xiaonan stood on Broken Heart Cliff with his hands behind his back. His eyes seemed to have the vicissitudes of the sun, moon, and stars rising and rotating. There was a complicated array formation beside him, burning with scorching demonic flames. Amidst the devilish flames, a strange weapon was being refined and slowly rotating. It was strange because it wasn't an ordinary sword, but something that looked like a crescent moon. One side of it was sharp, and it didn't have a handle. There were strange patterns all over it, beautiful and mysterious. Yi Xiaonan was waiting. He didn't know who he was waiting for, but he knew that those who should come would come. At this time, on a cliff more than 10 miles away from the Broken Heart Cliff, a middle-aged man wearing a gorgeous robe was nervously moving the array plate in front of him. The entire Broken Heart Cliff was displayed above the array plate. Behind the middle-aged man was Qi Yuanli and some other martial artists from Wind's Sweeping Tower. They were all holding large amounts of origin stones, spirit crystals, and other items that contained heaven-earth yuan qi. They were all prepared to fill the array formation at any time. This ugly and inconspicuous middle-aged man was the current tower master of Wind's Sweeping Tower, 100 Daybreak, Fang Fifan. Wind's Sweeping Tower was familiar with the secrets of the martial world, but Fang Fifan was very mysterious. Usually, he didn't even leave Wind's Sweeping Tower and was only responsible for organizing some information in the tower. However, he could control the world's wind media and was equivalent to Wind's Sweeping Tower's brain. However, the matter this time was too big, so big that even Wind's Sweeping Tower's anemophilia didn't dare to approach. Even martial arts grandmasters like Fang Fifan and Qi Yuanli wouldn't be able to last long in a battle of this level. The aftermath would be enough to send them on their way. However, Wind's Sweeping Tower didn't want to miss this battle. Therefore, they could only use secret techniques and consume large amounts of heavenly and earthly treasures to watch this battle from more than 10 miles away. At this time, Qi Yuanli suddenly couldn't help but exclaim, "It's here." Everyone looked at the projection and saw a Buddhist light descending in midair. The abbot of Great Light Temple, Su Ci, descended from the sky with lotuses under his feet. The Buddhist light around him was extremely holy. With a sigh, Su Ci said, "The lesson of the Kunlun devil cult is right before our eyes. Yi Xiaonan, why do you want to walk the same path as Dugu Weiwei?" The same path. Why can Dugu Weiwei walk some paths, but I can't? Yi Xiaonan looked at Su Ci and said calmly, "What really surprised me is you. Everyone says that you're not as good as Su Yun. Now, you've proven to the entire martial world that the previous abbot didn't choose the wrong person. You're half a step faster than Su Yun." Su Ci shook his head and said, "The people are foolish, but this penniless monk can't be foolish like them. This penniless monk doesn't need to prove anything to the world. I am who I am. Why should I be inferior to others, and why should I be stronger than others? That's right. The people are foolish. If the words of an ant were to be taken seriously, then that would be called foolish." The black dragon's roar resounded through the world. The Ying family's patriarch descended. His back was straight like the back of a dragon. Every move he made was like a dragon or a tiger, and his aura was extraordinary. The other disciples of Wind's Sweeping Tower were dumbfounded. Who was this person? Looking at his cultivation technique, he should be from the Xianxia clan. But when did the Xianxia clan have such a powerhouse? Fang Fifan squinted his small eyes and said, "You brats really have a bad memory. More than 50 years ago, the old patriarch of the Xianxia clan, Dragon King Ying Si, spread the news of the patriarch's position in a low-key manner. After that, he went silent. Everyone thought he was dead. Now, it seems that he quietly crossed the Dragon's Gate and became the true Dragon King. This Ying family's old Dragon King used to have a fiery temper. Back then, I didn't believe that he would choose to die in a low-key manner. Now, it looks like I'm right. The disciples of Wind's sweeping tower looked at each other and revealed helpless expressions. It happened more than 50 years ago. He wasn't even born at that time. There was so much information about the Jianghu in the world. As an anemophilia, even Qi Yuanli couldn't remember all the information about the current Jianghu, let alone things that happened decades ago. One of the reasons why Fang Fifan was able to become the tower master of Wind's sweeping tower was that he could really remember any information he saw. He had a photographic memory and a permanent memory. That was why he was able to become the tower master. Yingxi took a step forward and looked straight at Yi Xiaonan. He said in a deep voice, "If the moon-worshipping sect wants to follow the old path of the Kunlun devil cult, it's fine. But I will be a roadblock today. If you can break through, the entire Shangshui clan won't stop you." Yingxi didn't say what would happen if Yi Xiaonan couldn't break through. He knew that Yi Xiaonan already knew the consequences from the moment he made his decision. Why bother? A sigh was heard. Lu Chenglu of the true martial sect had also arrived. He had a horsetail whisk in his left hand and a sword in his right. The horsetail whisk was Ning Xuanji's, and the sword was his. Taoist Lu, don't be so sentimental. The devil Dao is the devil Dao. If they could know their place, would they still be called the devil Dao? If we can't reason with them, we'll reason with our swords. The 3 true fire spirit refinement cultivators from Sword King City had gathered. Shen Tianwang carried an unusually heavy metal box on his back. Yingxi frowned slightly when he saw the 3 from Sword King City. A look of disgust appeared in his eyes. Actually, the reason why these people had come to stop Yi Xiaonan was very simple. Su Ci was the abbot of the Great Light Temple. Regardless of whether he was at true fire spirit refinement or heaven and earth mystic enlightenment, he had to come. And Yingxi wanted to fight to his heart's content before he died. He didn't want to have any regrets. Lu Chenglu came for the entire Jianghu, just like his ancestral master, Ning Xuanji. Only the 3 men from Sword King City had come here with the intention to gain more benefits. At that moment, Yi Xiaonan suddenly looked up. Those who are supposed to come are all here. As soon as he said that, Yi Xiaonan waved his hand. The moon blade, which was still being refined in the demonic flames, instantly took shape. It shone with dazzling moonlight. When it rose from the demonic flames, it looked like a bright moon in the sky. In an instant, the entire heartbroken cliff was illuminated by the sun and moon. Yi Xiaonan's demonic weapon had long been refined, but he had been waiting. Waiting for those who were supposed to come. Blood sacrifice for the demonic weapon. The shining moon blade whistled through the air as if it was cutting through the void. It slashed toward the 3 true fire spirit refinement cultivators from Sword King City. The metal box on Shen Tianwang's back opened, and a blood-stained, broken bronze sword appeared in the air. Although it was only half a broken sword, the aura on it was incomparably frightening and powerful. As it stood in the air, it was like a king had descended. Everything in the world had to bow down to it, and even the yuan energy of the world had involuntarily poured into the broken sword. Heavenly King Shen, Meng Yanghe, and Duguli formed sword seals with their hands. Sharp sword chi surged into the human king's sword, and the broken sword instantly blossomed with dazzling light. However, Yi Xiaonan's moon blade slashed through the void with unparalleled sharpness. Under the moonlight, it cut through everything. The void seemed to be split in 2 by the moon blade. There was a loud bang, and the human king's sword was sent flying by the moon blade. A terrifying shockwave erupted in the air, and the sharp chi scattered in all directions. The sword seals of Heavenly King Shen and the other 2 completely collapsed. The 3 of them spat out a mouthful of blood, and their eyes revealed a look of horror. One hit. Just one hit, and the human king's sword had already been destroyed. The 3 of them were immediately seriously injured. This was completely different from what Heavenly King Shen had imagined. How could Yi Xiaonan be so powerful? With a sigh, Su Ci took a step forward. Countless Buddha shadows appeared around him, densely packed together. Tens of thousands of Buddhas filled the void, and endless Buddhist chants rang out in the air. They transformed into a boundless Buddhist kingdom that enveloped Yixiaonan. The black dragon surrounding family's patriarch, Ing Si, roared angrily. The black chi of heaven and earth transformed into a black dragon that circled around him. He threw a punch, and the dragon roared for thousands of miles. The chi of heaven and earth shattered under his punch. Before the punch even landed, the heartbroken cliff under Yixiaonan's feet had already begun to shake and crack. The two heaven and earth Elysium cultivators attacked. Their power was like that of immortals and Buddhas. A casual attack seemed to be able to shatter the sky and split the earth. Chapter 752. For the real pellet state martial artists, watching the battle of the heaven and earth mystic realm was simply watching the gods fight. At this time, Fang Fifan and Qi Yuanli, who were watching with the array more than 10 miles away, had this feeling. Even though they were already more than 10 miles away, they could still feel the powerful vibration. It was like an earth dragon turning over. It was extremely terrifying. However, the more terrifying thing was yet to come. The two heaven and earth mystic realm powerhouses attacked together, but the expression on Yixiaonan's face still didn't change in the slightest. He just pointed to the sky, and in an instant, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. There was a crack in the sky, and he mended the sky alone. But how could manpower be qualified to mend the sky? Mend Heaven Heart Sutra sounded like a gentle righteous method, but it was actually the power of stealing the sky, the heaven-defying demonic technique that stole the majesty of the gods. In an instant, thousands of Buddhas shattered under Yixiaonan's finger, and the Buddhist kingdom completely collapsed and dissipated. With his robe fluttering, Yixiaonan's palm fell and hit Ing Ying's old ancestor Ing Si. The power of this palm encompassed heaven and earth. It seemed to be an ordinary palm, but it seemed to cover the sky. When the fist and palm met, there was a moment of stillness, but the next moment, it was as if the sky collapsed. With the two as the center, a powerful force erupted completely. Cracks appeared on the broken intestine cliff under their feet. In the end, the broken intestine cliff that had existed for countless years was completely destroyed. The black dragon around Ing Si was wailing. Under that powerful force, the black dragon around him shattered inch by inch, and he was directly blasted away by Yixiaonan's powerful force. At this moment, the horsetail whisk swept over. When the horsetail whisk swept over, countless Dao patterns turned into silk threads and entangled Yixiaonan. Each Dao pattern was densely packed, and each Dao pattern was different. But at this time, Yixiaonan waved his hand, and the crescent blade seemed to break through the space, directly cutting the horsetail whisk in half. Countless Dao patterns flew like snowflakes. In a short period of time, Yixiaonan had repelled two heaven and earth mystic realm powerhouses and two groups of people with treasures. His power could no longer be described in words. On the cliff more than 10 miles away, the people of the wind-sweeping building didn't even dare to breathe, watching the fierce battle scene nervously. Qi Yuanli suddenly asked, "Floor Master, who do you think will win in the end?" Although Yixiaonan had defeated the old celestial master and divine monk Rama in the past, it was not a battle to the death. In a true battle of life and death, victory and defeat were not so easily determined. This time, the righteous path sects were outnumbered. Although Yixiaonan had the upper hand, in fact, in this kind of siege, the more they fought, the more the side with fewer people would suffer. Fang Fifan shook his head and said, "How would I know? If I could understand the battle between heaven and earth mystic realm martial artists, I wouldn't be the tower master of Wind's sweeping tower, but the alliance master of Heaven Alliance. By the way, has the moon-worshipping cult deployed manpower?" Yixiaonan was fighting fiercely with everyone on the broken intestine cliff side. On the moon-worshipping cult side, a great battle was bound to break out at any moment. How could Wind's sweeping tower miss such an occasion? Qi Yuanli nodded. 60% of Wind's sweeping towers in Emophilia have already gathered around moon-worshipping cult. I guarantee that they won't miss a single detail. Fang Fifan's eyes glowed with excitement as he said, "The Jianghu is turbulent, the wind is rising and the clouds are surging. It's a kind of fortune and an honor for Wind's Sweeping Tower to be a witness of this great era. Anemophilia weren't good at martial arts. This was the case for both Fang Fifan and Qi Yuanli. But as anemophilia, they wanted to be a witness of this vast Jianghu. Whether it was the righteous path or the evil path, they were all a part of this Jianghu. Therefore, Wind's Sweeping Tower didn't have a position at all. Their identity was like those historians in the imperial court, only responsible for recording history. But in the Jianghu, they had no choice. Historians in the imperial court sometimes had to face the threat of the imperial family. They couldn't write down some ugly secrets about the imperial family, and they had to violate their bottom line to discredit the previous dynasty. Wind's Sweeping Tower was the same. When the righteous path was powerful, they would definitely be slightly biased towards the righteous path, and when the evil path was powerful, they would be biased towards the evil path. Of course, in this great war between the righteous path and the evil path, Wind's Sweeping Tower wouldn't be biased towards any side. They would only completely record it and pass it down for eternity. 500 years ago, when the righteous path joined forces to destroy the Kunlun devil cult, the war came too suddenly, causing Wind's Sweeping Tower to be unprepared. Therefore, many of the details were lost. But this time, Wind's Sweeping Tower was well prepared. Outside moon-worshipping cult in Miaojiang, the originally noisy forest was now incomparably quiet. Some of the snakes, insects, and beasts wandering in the forest had been completely scared away by the murderous aura of the martial artists present. At this time, if someone could fly in the sky and look over, they would discover that a large number of martial artists were hiding in the dense forest around moon-worshipping cult. To be precise, they weren't hiding, they were just waiting there. Using such a strong force to attack moon-worshipping cult, if they still needed to hide and launch a sneak attack, then the strength of the righteous path sects would be too weak. Among these people, there were monks from the Great Light Temple, Taoist priests from the true martial arts cult and the Chunyang Dao sect, the 5 major sword sects, the 7 sects and 8 schools, the 9 major aristocratic families, and a small portion of the righteous path forces in Jianghu. Almost all of them were here, and there was a steady stream of people coming. Among these people, some had been coerced. If the forces they were on good terms with wanted to attack moon-worshipping cult, they naturally wanted to attack too. There were also some who were hot-headed and wanted to come to moon-worshipping cult to destroy the evil path. Of course, there were also some who were brainless and thought that moon-worshipping cult would be destroyed. Therefore, they were like wild dogs that had smelled blood and were ready to tear off a piece of moon-worshipping cult's flesh. This group of people did not have anyone commanding them, and no one was qualified to command them. However, everyone was waiting at the same time. No one wanted to be the first to stand out. At this moment, the Great Light Temple Su Yun suddenly said, "Benefactors from Wind's Sweeping Tower, please come out. I believe you have already received news. May I ask how the battle situation is?" The martial artist from Wind's Sweeping Tower, who was hiding in the tree and observing the situation, was shocked. He did not expect Su Yun to suddenly ask him about these things. To be honest, this time Wind's Sweeping Tower was prepared to be neutral and not help either side. However, now that Su Yun had asked him, he did not dare to not answer. The martial artist from Wind's Sweeping Tower could only jump down from the tree and walk in front of Su Yun. He said respectfully, "There is news. Your temple's abbot, Great Master Su Yun, has stepped into the heaven and earth mystic realm and is fighting with Ying family's patriarch, Ying Si, who is also at the heaven and earth mystic realm. There is also Sword King City Lord, Heavenly Sword, Shen Tian Wang, Jiannan King, Duguli, and the previous Xinjiang Hall's Hall Master Meng Yanghe. 3 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses are driving Sword King City's treasure, the Human King Sword, to participate in the battle. The true martial sect leader, Sage Xianxian, Lu Changlu, is also fighting Yi Xiaonan with the horsetail whisk left behind by the immortal Ning Xuanji. The outcome is unknown. As the warrior from the Wind's Sweeping Tower spoke, everyone present took in a deep breath. In the past, Su Si stepping into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth was already big news. However, in front of this matter, it was just an embellishment. There was also the Ying family's patriarch, Yingxi. Who was that? Some of the martial artists who were born in recent years had not even heard of this name. Only some of the older martial artists vaguely remembered the dead patriarch of Xianxia Ying clan in the past. Moreover, Sword King's city had attacked with all their strength. The true martial sect's Lu Chenglu had also taken out the immortal's relic. This kind of lineup was terrifying just thinking about it. At this moment, after Su Yun heard this, a smile appeared on his face. It was unknown whether he was smiling because Su Ci had stepped into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth or because he thought that the outcome had been determined with so many people besieging Yishaonan. Disciples of Great Light Temple, attack with me. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Yun took a step forward. Buddha's light surged around his body. The surrounding disciples of Great Light Temple also followed him. They chanted scriptures, and their voices were extremely majestic. There were so many forces present. They had not attacked before because they lacked a leader. At this moment, the people of Great Light Temple took the lead to attack. They also seemed to have gained courage. They followed behind Great Light Temple and prepared to attack. In front of moon-worshipping church, the 9 great god Magispriests were all present. Behind them were moon-worshipping church's high priest and saintess, as well as a group of moon-worshipping church disciples. It could be said that moon-worshipping church had long been prepared for this battle. To put it in a more profound way, this was another confrontation between the orthodox and demonic paths. Whether the orthodox path was stronger or the demonic path was higher depended on the outcome of this battle. To put it in layman's terms, it was the orthodox sects testing moon-worshipping church's strength. Its nature was similar to that of Chu Xiu's. If you have the strength, we can't kill you even if we attack. That's good. This is your moon-worshipping church's strength, and it is also your moon-worshipping church's luck. From now on, the number 1 sect of the demonic path would be recognized by the underworld, and both sides would once again fall into a balance. On the other hand, if moon-worshipping church could not survive this time, then for the orthodox sects, this would be a successful elimination of demons. They would eradicate a large demonic path sect that was developing towards the Kunlun devil cult, which was worthy of celebration. In this underworld, it was useless to talk about high-sounding principles. Only strength was the real truth. Fists and knives were always more useful than words. Looking at the dense murderous intent in front of him, the high priest suddenly said, "Do you think the leader can win?" Dong Wangtai did not turn his head. He only faced forward and said lightly, "You are the high priest, and you still ask me? Isn't divination what your lineage is good at?" The high priest sneered and said, "My lineage is good at divination, but when it comes to me, what I'm good at is killing." At this time, Dong Wangtai could not be bothered to bicker with the high priest. He only said in a low voice, "I also don't know if the leader can win. I only know that the leader will not lose." In Dong Wangtai's eyes, Yishaonan was a godlike existence. People could lose, but gods could not be defeated. Therefore, the incomparably arrogant Dong Wangtai looked down on everyone. He looked down on the high priest and moon-worshipping church's holy maiden because they were barbarians of Miaojiang. He also looked down on the other 8 god Magispriests, thinking that they were not worthy of having the same name as him. But Dong Wangtai, who was arrogant to the point of conceit, would only bow in front of Yishaonan. Chapter 753. On a hill a few miles away from moon-worshipping cult, the people of the Yinma clan gathered and observed the situation below. Chu Xiu stood behind Wei Shiya. He also saw Xing Situ, who was looking at him maliciously from time to time, but Chu Xiu did not care. There were countless warriors in Jianghu who wanted to tear him to pieces. Who was Xing Situ? Seeing that the Great Light Temple had already made their move, the Yinma clan did not immediately help. It was not that the Yinma clan did not keep their word, but they had already said before that they would not risk their lives for moon-worshipping cult. The first wave of attack was the most dangerous. If moon-worshipping cult could withstand this attack, then the Yinma clan would take action. On the other hand, if moon-worshipping cult could not even withstand the first wave of attack, then the Yinma clan would naturally not come to die. The atmosphere on moon-worshipping cult's side was extremely tense, so was the Yinma clan. At this time, Mei Qingnian could not help but say, "Hey, when the world's righteous sects joined forces to besiege the sacred church, is this the scene now?" Chu Xiu did not speak, but Wei Shia snorted and said, "Don't think too highly of moon-worshipping cult. Compared to the sacred church, moon-worshipping cult is still too far away." In the past, all the righteous sects in Jianghu joined forces to besiege the sacred church, and even neutral forces did not exist. Even a force like Wind's sweeping tower was coerced by those righteous sects to provide them with information. One could imagine how crucial that battle was. Because it was a battle of life and death, all the righteous sects in the world knew that as long as the sacred church was not destroyed, they would always live in fear. Therefore, no one dared to hold back, and no one would hold back. Now, as you can see, although moon-worshipping cult has provoked some people, it is far from the level of the entire Jianghu. Even some of the old monsters in the righteous sects have not made a move. Otherwise, do you think the old celestial master and Rama are so trustworthy that they would seal the mountain and not make a move? Wei Shia was old and experienced, so he was very clear about some of the unspoken rules in Jianghu. While they were talking, the two sides had already set up their battle formations and were facing each other. In terms of power and numbers, the moon-worshipping church was definitely at a disadvantage. However, now that the moon-worshipping church was ready to fight to the death, their momentum was not weak. Su Yun shook his head and said, "I believe all of you are aware of the situation over at Yi Xiaonan's side. The siege wasn't glorious, but it was very effective. Do you think Yi Xiaonan can still return to the moon-worshipping cult? There was no point in fighting to the death. Put down the butcher's knife. Although you can't become a Buddha, I can help you overcome your inner demons." Those who were familiar with Su Yun's personality looked at him in surprise. Su Yun actually persuaded them to surrender? What kind of trick was this? In the hearts of the people of Jianghu, Su Yun not only represented his unfathomable strength, but his methods were also famous in Jianghu. When Su Ci was in seclusion, Su Yun was in charge of the Great Light Temple. He did things decisively and forcefully. No one could talk conditions in front of Su Yun. Although Su Yun was criticized for being inflexible, he was extremely decisive. But now, he actually wanted to recruit the moon-worshipping cult. Had he changed his temperament? In reality, Su Yun just didn't want the Great Light Temple to suffer too much damage. Dong Wang Tai had confidence in Yi Xiaonan, and Su Yun also had confidence in Su Ci. He believed that Su Ci and the others would win in the end. Anyway, they already had hope of winning. Although there were many people here, this was not the main battlefield. Since that was the case, why fight until both sides suffered? Dong Wang Tai laughed. The demonic flames around him were monstrous. It was as if they covered the sky and the sun as they soared into the sky. Overcome my inner demons? Unfortunately, my demonic nature is too deep. Su Yun, you can't overcome me. Even if your Buddha comes, he still doesn't have the qualifications to overcome me. As Dong Wang Tai's voice fell, he used the Burning Sky treasure book to its limit. The demonic flames that filled the sky fell like a meteor shower. The power was unparalleled. Su Yun sighed. The Buddha's light around him shone brightly. He chanted the Buddha's voice. Every syllable he uttered shook the void and echoed. When the 6 syllables were uttered, the Buddha's voice reverberated in the sky. It was like a scripture that resounded throughout the world. In the Buddha's voice, the demonic flames melted and turned into Buddha's light. Seeing that the two on this side had already started fighting, the other moon-worshipping church martial artists and the righteous sect's martial artists also began to fight. In an instant, the front of the moon-worshipping church's mountain gate instantly turned into a pot of porridge. Countless gang cheese exploded, sword cheese swirled, and saber lights scattered everywhere. In the battle just now, moon-worshipping cult was actually at a disadvantage. The strength of moon-worshipping cult was not weak. In addition to the 9 divine magispriests, moon-worshipping cult also had more than 10 martial arts grand masters. Some were from the older generation, and some were newly advanced. They led the fearless disciples to block the first wave of attacks. The high priest of moon-worshipping cult cast a curse technique at the rear. Even the powerhouse of true fire spirit refinement state was targeted by his illusory demonic blood curse. The martial arts real pellet state couldn't resist for long before being cursed by him. Moreover, this was the gate of moon-worshipping cult. How could moon-worshipping cult not have the slightest preparation? The moment everyone made their move, moon-worshipping cult's array had already lit up to assist the disciples of moon-worshipping cult to kill the people of the righteous sections. It was a pity that even though moon-worshipping cult had prepared so much and their strength was not weak, the righteous sects only had one advantage, which was that they had more people. Even the Great Light Temple was not as good as moon-worshipping cult as a single major sect. But now there were dozens of forces, big and small, added together. They had a martial arts grand master and a few unity of heaven and man martial artists. In this way, no matter how strong the people of moon-worshipping cult were, they couldn't withstand it. Especially in the area of high-level combat power, Dongwang Tai's strength was indeed superior, but the righteous sects also had Su Yun who could match him. As for the other major sects, such as Chunyang Dao sect, Storm Sword Tomb, Xiahou clan, and other forces, they also had true fire spirit refinement state powerhouses. How could moon-worshipping cult block them? How long are you going to keep watching? At this moment, Dongwang Tai suddenly roared. Hearing this voice, Su Yun's heart suddenly sank. Who is watching? Who are the people of moon-worshipping cult waiting for? At this moment, on the small mountain, Wuxia stretched his waist and said calmly, Everyone, you can attack now, lest those people from moon-worshipping cult say that we're not trustworthy. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic qi around Wuxia erupted and directly surged towards the battlefield. Behind him, countless hidden devil clan martial artists also erupted with powerful demonic qi around them as they followed Wuxia. The expressions of the righteous sect's martial artists who were fighting with moon-worshipping cults suddenly changed. The hidden devil clan actually joined the battle. How was that possible? Everyone in the pugilistic world knew about the feud between the Bright Devil clan and the Hidden Devil clan. The Hidden Devil clan hated the Bright Devil clan for being traitors, watching from the sidelines and even kicking them when they were down. The feud between the two sides was no less than the feud between the righteous and demonic sections. Yet now, the Hidden Devil clan actually attacked. What price did moon-worshipping cult pay? Looking at the figures of Wuxia and the others, Su Yun sighed and said, All these years, the righteous sects didn't go all out to kill the Hidden Devil clan. They clearly gave you a way out, so why do you have to jump into this muddy water? A way out? It's fine if you don't want a way out now. This time, if you really destroy moon-worshipping cult, I'm afraid that the next step will be to join forces to destroy my Hidden Devil clan, right? Wuxia sneered. Su Yun shook his head. Although the Hidden Devil clan was declining day by day, there were still people who understood. Everyone had done things like putting one's own safety before matters of principle. The only difference was when to keep a low profile and when to make a move. If the Hidden Devil clan was a group of self-interested short-sighted people, then there was no need to worry. However, it seemed that there might be such people in the Hidden Devil clan, but there were also people like Wuxia who understood. It could only be said that the Hidden Devil clan was not fated to die. Since your Hidden Devil clan is destined to get involved in this muddy water, then today, all of you will also stay in moon-worshipping cult. Su Yun's body shone with Buddha's light, and the immeasurable Buddhist kingdom condensed. Half of the sky above the entire battlefield was shrouded by the endless Buddha's light. At Su Yun's level, even Wind's sweeping tower couldn't figure out his true strength. Therefore, the ranking was only ranked according to the strength that these experts showed when they last made a move. The last time Su Yun made a move was a few years ago. Because the Northern Yen Heavenly Sin branch was destroyed, Wu Tiannan, the leader of the Blue Dragon Society, came to fight. Su Yun made a move once. However, Su Yun didn't use his full strength at that time. he only made a few moves to force Butiannan to retreat. The outside world said that Butiannan was a madman, and his actions were indeed very crazy. However, a madman was not a fool. Therefore, after feeling that he was no match for Su Yun, Butiannan directly left and didn't choose to fight to the death. This time, Su Yun showed his strongest strength in the battle between the righteous and demonic paths. This power fluctuation was probably not far from the mysterious heaven and earth realm. At this time, Chu Xiu also joined the battle, but he was not doing anything. Of course, it wasn't that Chu Xiu deliberately slacked off, but this kind of situation wasn't worthy of his full strength. The real battlefield that decided the outcome was Yi Xiaonan. This was just a lower-level battlefield. Even if the winner was decided here, if Yi Xiaonan lost, the moon-worshipping cult wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Moreover, with Su Yun, Dong Huangtai, and Wei Shia, who were powerhouses in the true fire spirit refinement state, fighting, the martial Dao masters who were considered powerhouses in other places were no longer powerful enough. It was normal for them to be killed if they were not careful. Although Chu Xiu had the experience of killing a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator before, Fang Jinwu had been too scheming back then. Moreover, to put it bluntly, Fang Jinwu was old after all, and he was a loose cultivator. All the existences who had reached the true fire spirit refinement realm were great sections. Some of them were even ranked on the reputation list with extraordinary combat strength. Chu Xiu didn't want to get close to them. Anyway, one more person wouldn't affect the overall situation of the battle. Chu Xiu used the great soul-searching hand to kill people from below. With a wave of his hand, he could extract souls. It was simply a killing weapon. It was very simple and easy. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu felt a warm sensation in his chest. The red bead of blood he obtained from Lin Baohuang's body suddenly throbbed. It was a very clear feeling. It needed fresh blood, a lot of fresh blood. Chapter 754. Chu Xiu didn't know how to use the blood pearl that he had obtained from Lin Baohuang. Back then, he had chosen this item only because when he saw the blood pearl, he had felt a throbbing sensation in his body. That was why Chu Xiu had chosen it. Originally, Chu Xiu was going to wait until he returned to the Jianghu Hall to study this thing. He did not expect that the war between the righteous and demonic factions would come so soon. The moon-worshipping cult had already started fighting, so he had to put this matter aside for the time being. And now, he felt the throbbing of this blood bead. This thing actually needed to be fed with fresh blood for sacrificial refining? However, when he thought that this thing was something from the Kunlun devil cult in the past, Chu Xiu also felt relieved. It would be strange if the things of the demonic path were not evil. Therefore, after feeling this throbbing, Chu Xiu immediately gave up using the great soul-searching hand of extinguishing sky and extinguishing earth to kill people. Instead, he used the great demonic blood technique to drain the opponent's blood and qi. However, this move of his was extremely conspicuous. When Chu Xiu used the great soul-searching hand of extinguishing sky and extinguishing earth, there was actually no strange phenomenon. The power of the person's spirit was completely extracted, and the person died directly. There was not even the release of gang qi. However, at this time, Chu Xiu used the great demonic blood technique with all his strength. Everywhere he passed, the evil power of the great demonic blood technique began to madly extract the blood of the surrounding warriors. Strands of blood flew, with Chu Xiu in the center. At this time, Chu Xiu looked like the reincarnation of the blood demon. Moreover, the warriors who had their blood and qi drained became extremely terrifying. Without blood and qi, the corpses were like dried corpses. There was only a layer of skin wrapped around the body, and they simply did not look like humans. In this way, wherever Chu Xiu passed, he directly left behind a ground of dried corpses, which was extremely conspicuous. If Chu Xiu kept a low profile, it would have been fine. However, he was so high profile that he was wantonly killing here. It immediately attracted the attention of some righteous sex powerhouses, and they all attacked him. Chu Xiu. How dare you! A furious shout rang out and 3 old Taoist priests from the pure Yang Dao sect surrounded Chu Xiu in the middle. Among them was Master Su Yangzi, who had come to find trouble with Chu Xiu before. Last time, Chu Xiu, you were lucky enough to survive. Now, you're getting involved in the matter of moon-worshipping cult. Are you courting death? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, I don't know if I'm courting death, but I do know that you're definitely here to court death. A loser dares to bark in front of me. If not for that young martial uncle of yours bringing your patriarch's pure yang sword, do you think you have the right to say such nonsense in front of me? Although it was said that different people could not make plans together, but Chu Xiu was not extreme to the point of being hostile to all the people from the righteous sections. For example, Chu Xiu had a good relationship with Feng Qi Shao. He did not hate Bailu, but rather admired him. Of course, Feng Qi Shao did not come today, and neither did Bailu. Sword King City and Shangshui in clan were not idiots. The war between the righteous and demonic sects was a war between the righteous and demonic sections. It was not a battle to the death. They had already taken action with their high-end combat power, so the people below them naturally did not need to come and fight. However, if one were to say who Chu Xiu hated the most among the righteous sects, it would undoubtedly be the monks from Great Light Temple and the Daoists from Chunyang Dao sect. The former was unreasonable, while the latter only listened to reason. It was impossible to communicate with them. Therefore, when Chu Xiu faced them, he usually liked to use his fists and knives to talk. That was more effective than talking with reason. Therefore, before Xiangzi and the other 2 could speak, a demonic saber appeared in Chu Xiu's hand. It was the evil saber of the 7 demonic sabers. The demonic dance was left with Mo Yezi to be repaired and upgraded. During this time, Chu Xiu did not use the saber much. Although the 7 demonic saber was also a saber, its greatest effect was to arouse the 7 emotions and 6 desires in one's heart. When faced head-on, its toughness was far inferior to the demonic dance. Guan Xiu had shattered his beloved saber in the past, but it did not matter. For the current Chu Xiu, he was emotionless, without love, and without emotions. Even if he had the beloved saber in his hand, he could not control it like he could comprehend the hatred of the hatred saber. However, the other sabers were still fine. Chu Xiu did not want them to shatter as well. However, when he attacked Xiangzi and the other 2, he used the evil saber at the right time. Who said that the righteous sects did not have evil in their hearts? The righteousness that they boasted about was the greatest evil. The evil saber fell, and the saber qi swept out. Although it was blocked by the powerful pure yang energy of the 3 of them, the power of the evil saber penetrated deep into their hearts and affected their inner demons. Xiangzi and the other 2 old Daoists were veteran martial Dao grandmasters of the Chunyang Dao sect. Putting aside their own strength, they had experienced enough. They might have killed more people than some of the demonic Dao sect's people. Who would dare to say that none of the people he had killed in his life were innocent? Who dared to say that they did not have any evil intentions and did not do anything that went against their conscience? Before they could attack, Xiangzi and the other 2 were hit by the evil saber. They spat out a mouthful of blood and barely suppressed their restless inner demons. Set up the pure yang demon slaying sword array. Su Yangzi shouted angrily. The other 2 martial Dao grandmasters of the Chunyang Dao sect also attacked immediately. 2 longswords flew out from each of them. Together with the longswords in their hands, the pure yang energy and sharp sword qi danced on the 9 longswords. The violent sword qi soared into the sky. The 9 swords circulated and surrounded Chu Xiu in the center. As the sword qi scattered, they attacked wildly at Chu Xiu. Su Yangzi was just stubborn, but he was not an idiot. Since he had already suffered a loss in the hands of Chu Xiu, he naturally would not rush over recklessly this time. Although they had suffered a small loss in the first exchange, they still had the strength to fight. The pure yang demon slaying sword formation of the Chunyang Dao sect was quite famous in the pugilistic world. In the past, a demon lord of the Kunlun devil cult had died in this sword formation. Of course, the sword formation was set up by the 9 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect. There was also a heaven and earth elemental realm powerhouse who presided over the sword formation. Now that the 3 of them had joined forces, although their power could not be compared to the patriarch, it was not weak either. In the sword formation, the pure yang energy soared into the sky. It was very eye-catching. Some people on the battlefield subconsciously looked over. Could it be that the Chunyang Dao sect was fighting with a divine magus of the moon-worshipping cult? Even the pure yang demon-slaying sword formation was used. However, when they saw that the one who was surrounded in the sword formation was actually Chu Xiu, they were relieved. Chu Xiu's strength was obvious to all. He was not weaker than the divine magus of the moon-worshipping cult. It should be said that his strength was even far stronger than most of the divine magi of the moon-worshipping cult. It was worth it for the Chunyang Dao sect to use the pure yang demon-slaying sword formation to deal with him. Some of the people of the moon-worshipping cult suddenly had a good impression of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was a member of the Yinma clan. Although he had promised to help them, the people of the moon-worshipping cult thought that he might not use his full strength. But now it seemed that they had misjudged Chu Xiu. He had attracted 3 Grandmaster-level powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect all at once, sharing a lot of the pressure for them. This Chu Xiu was really meticulous. Even the Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult controlled the goo insect to kill the opponent while saying to Xianxia, who had also come to help, "Look at Chu Xiu. He only came to help, but he could attract 3 Grandmaster-level powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect. Look at yourself." Xianxia wanted to vomit blood when he heard this. How could they compare? If he had the ability to fight against 3 martial Dao Grandmasters, would he still need to suck up to a woman like her? The Yinma clan was invited by the moon-worshipping cult with conditions. As a sect of the Bright Demon clan, the Evil Poles sect had always followed the moon-worshipping cult's lead. Of course, he had to come himself. In the end, he took the initiative to come, but he was despised for being weak. Xianxia's resentment could even be felt by some of the warriors around him. They could not help but stay away from him. At the same time, Xianxia's attacks became more violent. At this time, in the field, Chu Xiu was trapped in the sword formation. He raised his eyebrows, put away the evil sword in his hand, and made a Buddhist seal with his hand. The sun-changing technique had already been cast. The pure yang demon-slaying sword formation could slay demons, but he did not know if this Buddha could. In an instant, endless Buddhist light rose from the sword formation. The Vairocana phantom behind Chu Xiu formed the colorless fixing palm seal. Everything in front of him began to distort and melt, and the countless pure yang sword chi were instantly destroyed. Damn it! This is the work of those fools from the Buddhist sects. Seeing this scene, Su Yangzi could not help but curse. Master Tam Yuan, a Buddhist holy monk, actually passed on a pure Buddhist technique to Chu Xiu, a demon whose hands were stained with blood. If this was not a fool, then what was? The pure yang demon-slaying sword formation had a great suppression on the power of demons, but it was not the same as slaying the Buddha. For other power attributes, this sword formation seemed very normal. The Vairocana phantom continued to attack wildly, and the sword formation erupted with dazzling gang chi light, but it was still useless. Cracks gradually appeared on the 9 swords. Finally, under Chu Xiu's ferocious attacks, they all exploded with a loud bang. Just based on the foundation of power, Chu Xiu was stronger than the few old Daoists from the Chunyang Dao sect. The foundation of power was not something that grew stronger the longer one lived. At the age of Su Yangzi and the others, it was already good if their power did not decline, let alone increase. The power of the primordial spirit condensed into arrows, and the soul-extinguishing arrows shot straight at Su Yangzi. Moreover, the arrows came one after another, without any pause. With the support of the heaven's sun gazing at air, it was basically impossible to dodge. Su Yangzi could only use his pure yang astral chi to resist. Compared to the true chi of other attributes, pure yang astral chi was even stronger against this primordial spirit's secret technique. Unfortunately, it was still useless. After a few arrows, Su Yangzi's primordial spirit was already heavily injured, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. The swords in the hands of the remaining 2 old Daoists had already shattered, but they could not just watch as Su Yangzi was killed. Therefore, when one of them held a horsetail whisk and swung it down, the horsetail whisk erupted with thousands of golden rays, enveloping Chu Xiu's entire body. The other person formed a seal with his hand. Pure yang gang qi condensed in the seal. It was as if the sun was falling from the sky. It fell towards Chu Xiu's head, causing a violent explosion. Chapter 755. A large orthodox sect like the Pure Yang Daoist sect had heritage. Such a large sect might not be stronger than some of the rising forces, but their only advantage was that all the warriors from the Pure Yang Daoist sect were not too weak. To put it simply, martial artists from large sects like Chunyang Dao sect might not have an upper limit, but their lower limit was very high. Unlike the World Alliance, there was only one powerhouse, Qinqing Di, and the rest were all nobodies. There were only a handful of people in the underworld who could be besieged by 3 martial Dao grandmasters from Chunyang Dao sect. Unfortunately, they had encountered one today. Looking at the 2 Chunyang Dao sect grandmasters who were attacking him, Chu Xiu had a murderous look in his eyes. The blood pearl in his body was very eager for the power of qi and blood. The qi and blood of a martial Dao grandmaster was definitely stronger than that of a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and man realm. Although these 2 guys did not look young, they were not to the point where they could not squeeze out any qi and blood. Therefore, Chu Xiu's figure moved, his speed exploding to the extreme. As he charged toward one of them, he shot 3 soul-extinguishing arrows in a row at the other person. The annihilating heaven and earth obliterating selfless killing fist fell with a domineering momentum as if it wanted to crush everything. It went straight toward the martial artist who was using the Dao seal. With a loud bang, countless demonic aura and pure yang qi scattered in all directions. Chu Xiu was surrounded by black demonic aura and even formed an armor. This was the sign of the 9 heavens fiend golden body refinement. After obtaining this technique, Chu Xiu had been fighting with others. This kind of body refining technique could only improve through continuous fighting. Although this technique was given to him by Lu Fengxian, Chu Xiu's understanding of this technique might even be stronger than Lu Fengxian's. Surrounded by demonic aura, Chu Xiu was like a demon god who had descended. The pure yang qi around the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist opposite him had been completely smashed by Chu Xiu. After several punches, half of the martial artist's bones were even broken, and blood spurted out of his mouth. No matter how strong the strength and foundation of the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist was, he was still not as strong as the current Chu Xiu. Don't waste so much qi and blood. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands. Countless demonic aura and blood qi burst out like a spider web, completely entangling the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist. It was like a huge black and red cocoon, extremely terrifying. Su Yangzi and the other martial artists no longer cared about the injuries of their primordial spirits. They released their strongest power and attacked Chu Xiu. Among them, Su Yangzi even ignited his qi and blood. Clearly, he was ready to fight with his life. Chu Xiu formed a Buddhist seal with his hands and quickly formed the seals of the fast and slow 9 words formula. 9 Buddhist seals circled around his body, but at this moment, Chu Xiu was still enveloped by the demonic aura armor, which made him look abnormally evil. When the hand seals landed, the power of the 9 seals combined into one instantly shattered everything in front of him. The pure yang qi was completely melted. At this moment, Chu Xiu swung his hand, and the huge black and red cocoon smashed towards the 2 like a huge hammer. Su Yangzi and Su Yangzi knew that the people inside were their senior and junior brothers, so they did not dare to take it head-on. They could only wrap their vital energy in the huge cocoon and try to make it fall slowly. However, at that moment, the large cocoon suddenly exploded. Countless demonic auras and bloodlust auras burst out. In an instant, Master Su Yangzi and the other pure Yang Dao sect grandmaster were sent flying with blood spurting out of their mouths. There was also a huge crater that was hundreds of feet wide on the ground. Some of the warriors who were closer were even blown to smithereens. Looking at the center of the huge pit, the Chunyang Dao sect grandmaster had already been sucked dry by Chu Xiu. After the chaotic battlefield saw this scene, the small area close to Chu Xiu suddenly fell into a moment of silence. Facing three martial Dao grandmasters from Chunyang Dao sect head-on with his own strength and easily killing one and seriously injuring the other two, could it be that Chu Xiu's strength had really reached the true fire spirit refinement state? However, how long had it been since he broke through to martial Dao grandmaster? Seeing was believing. Chu Xiu's killing of Fang Jinwu could be considered a trick and a sneak attack. Although he still died in the end, it was still not a very convincing story. Now that Chu Xiu was facing the enemy head-on in front of so many people, there was no need to doubt his strength anymore. At this moment, Chu Xiu was feeling the blood purl on his body. This thing had swallowed a lot of martial artists' blood before. There were people of all levels, but there was no change at that time. It was not until this thing swallowed the blood of a martial Dao grandmaster that there was a qualitative change. Chu Xiu could not tell what kind of change it was, but he seemed to feel that there were many things hidden in this blood pearl. Of course, at this time, Chu Xiu had no time to study those things because he found that with his actions, he seemed to have angered the crowd. Great Light Temple's Vajra courtyard Skunda Venerable, Su Yen brought two old monks who were also from the Vajra courtyard. Although they were old, their qi and blood were still strong and surrounded Chu Xiu. It was true that Taoism and Buddhism could not coexist, but the Great Light Temple could not just watch a person from the demonic Dao act violently here. There was also a Sword Dao Grandmaster from the Storm Sword Tomb and the Forgetting Sword Hut walking towards Chu Xiu with a sword. Cheng Tingshan from the Hidden Sword Villa, who had been defeated by Chu Xiu in the past, also walked towards Chu Xiu with two swords in his hands with a hint of murderous intent. Cheng Tingshan had seen Chu Xiu before, but at that time, he acted as if he did not see him and still killed those demonic Dao martial artists from the moon-worshipping cult. Now that he saw Chu Xiu being besieged by everyone, he did not mind hitting him when he was down again. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows. This was not in line with his previous plan. Previously, Chu Xiu did plan to keep a low profile, but now it seemed that it would not work. Now, the righteous sects were joining forces to attack the moon-worshipping cult. In other words, they were the hunters, and the moon-worshipping cult was the prey. As a result, Chu Xiu was arrogantly killing here. He was even more conspicuous than the 9 great divine magispriests of the moon-worshipping cult. This was simply a provocation. If they did not get rid of him, who knew how many more people would die in his hands? However, all of a sudden, 6 martial Dao grandmasters turned to attack Chu Xiu, which greatly reduced the pressure on the moon-worshipping cult. Even Dong Wang Tai looked at Chu Xiu with a praising gaze. When he said that he would help, he did not hold back at all. There were very few honest and kind young people like him now. Sometimes, it was not a good thing to be too calculative. Just like Dong Wang Tai, if he wanted to kill someone, he would go all out. He would directly burn some of the burning sky mirror. Why would he care about so many schemes and gains and losses? Anyway, now he saw that Chu Xiu was quite to his liking. It was a pity that Chu Xiu had already become a subordinate of the Hidden Devil clan. It was impossible for him to snatch him away. This also made Dong Wang Tai feel a little pity. What future would there be for Chu Xiu to follow those old farts of the Hidden Devil clan? If he joined the moon-worshipping cult, Dong Wang Tai would even be willing to nurture him as the next generation Dong Wang Tai. Chu Xiu did not know what the others were thinking, but he knew that he seemed to be in big trouble. To be honest, Chu Xiu would rather fight with the seriously injured Fang Jinwu again than fall into this kind of siege. The reason was very simple. When fighting with Fang Jinwu, no matter how strong the opponent was, he could concentrate and use 100% or even 120% of his strength. Now that he was being besieged, Chu Xiu had to be distracted to observe the attacks of the others. This was bound to affect his battle. Moreover, any accidents could happen in this kind of siege, so Chu Xiu did not dare to go all out. He even had to save 20% of his strength to deal with unexpected situations. This kind of battle was a little frustrating. Moreover, the opponents were not a motley crew. It was impossible for them to be like when Chu Xiu was besieged in the past. He would first kill a few who shouted happily, and the others would naturally choose to escape. None of the people in front of him were to be trifled with. Su Yan chanted the name of Buddha, and the two monks beside him shone with a dazzling Buddhist light. It was as if they were plated with a layer of gold as they charged towards Chu Xiu. They had not cultivated the Temple of Great Light's indestructible golden body, but their strength was not weak. Every step they took would cause the ground to tremble. At this time, Qing Tingshan, the three people from Storm Sword Mound, and the Forgetful Sword Hut also drew their swords. In an instant, sword chi shot into the sky, bringing with it a boundless sharpness. They followed closely behind the three people from the Temple of Great Light and stabbed towards Chu Xiu. These 6 people did not know each other before. Only Qing Tingshan had a wider circle of friends and could talk to anyone. However, their rich experience in fighting in the Jianghu allowed them to have a tacit understanding when they attacked. The 3 warriors from the Temple of Great Light relied on their close combat prowess to fight Chu Xiu. As long as Chu Xiu revealed the slightest opening, the 3 people's sword chi would merge into one and attack Chu Xiu. Faced with this kind of power, Chu Xiu's speed exploded to the extreme. As he retreated, he also cast Heaven's Sun gazing at air to the extreme. As he escaped, he evaded the attacks of the few people. Although he looked a little flustered and messy, he was able to temporarily block them. He had to think about how he could kill a few more while he retreated, so that the blood beads on his body would be completely satiated. At this time, when Xing Situ, who had a grudge against Chu Xiu before, saw this scene, he could not help but frown. Seeing Chu Xiu's strength, Xing Situ felt a lingering fear in his heart. Fortunately, he was still rational back then. He did not directly fall out with Chu Xiu because he was worried that Chu Xiu was also a member of the demonic Dao and Wei Shi's faction. Otherwise, if he angered Chu Xiu, he would definitely not be able to withstand the strength that Chu Xiu had displayed. However, at this time, Xing Situ suddenly thought of something, and his expression became a little uncertain. After a while, he suddenly sent a voice transmission to the martial arts master beside him, who was working together with him to fight against the enemy. Brother Lin, do me a favor and drag the battle to Chu Xiu. Chapter 756. The man who teamed up with Xing Situ was called Lin Fang. Although he was a martial Dao grandmaster, he wasn't well known in the Jianghu. His master was from a small branch of the lurking demons and had only accepted him as a disciple before his death. Therefore, he didn't have much time to teach him and didn't train him to become a martial Dao grandmaster. Instead, he was allowed to mingle with the lurking demons. It was not until a while ago that he relied on a treasure to exchange for a period of guidance from Xing Situ's master, Yuan Tianfang, during the Yinma clan's gathering. That was how he was able to step into the martial Dao grandmaster realm. Because of this, he had become good friends with Xing Situ, and even treated him as his superior. Lin Fang didn't participate in the battle against the Earth Demon Hall, but he had heard of the conflict and grievances between Xing Situ and Chu Xiu. Therefore, when he heard Xing Situ's words, he vaguely guessed what Xing Situ wanted to do. Lin Fang couldn't help but lower his voice. Are you crazy? What kind of situation is this? You're playing tricks in front of so many people? These personal grievances are nothing. You can settle them later. If the patriarchs see this, even Senior Yuan won't be able to protect you. The lurking demons had already reached such a level that killing each other was, of course, prohibited. But a ban was a ban. Such things had definitely happened before. However, it was a serious matter for Xing Situ to still be scheming in the midst of the righteous and demonic wars. Xing Situ said indifferently, "Why are you so agitated? I'm not an idiot. Of course I won't plot against Chu Xiu at a time like this. It's just that we're in a mess right now." We can't beat our opponents, so we accidentally escape to Chu Xiu's side and then escape to recuperate. Is there a problem with that? Chu Xiu is fighting hard for moon-worshipping sect, but we don't want to lose our lives for moon-worshipping sect. Seeing that Lin Feng was still hesitating, Xing Situ couldn't help but sneer. Do you think that since you didn't offend Chu Xiu, you don't have to play tricks with me? You're wrong. You don't understand Chu Xiu. Although he's quite famous in Jianghu, he's actually not that broad-minded. You and I are good friends, including the fact that you've received master's guidance and successfully became a martial Dao grandmaster. These are all proof of our relationship. With Chu Xiu's strength and potential, he would definitely become a great figure in the Yinma clan in the future. My master is not good at networking, nor is he good at scheming, so he has always been alone. In the future, if Chu Xiu ascends to the throne, he might suppress my branch. With the relationship between us, do you think that Chu Xiu would leave you out? It doesn't matter if it succeeds or not, it's better than sitting around and waiting for death. Lin Feng's master died early, so he actually didn't know much about the matters of the upper echelons of the Yinma clan. He didn't know if Xing Situ was telling the truth. However, Xing Situ was right about one thing. He was very close to Xing Situ's branch. If he refused today, he didn't know if he would offend Chu Xiu or not, but he would definitely offend Xing Situ. Therefore, he could only cooperate with Xing Situ and pretend to be weak, leading people to Chu Xiu's side. The two people who fought with them were two martial Dao grandmasters from the true martial sect. In fact, they didn't use their full strength. In fact, the true martial sect was somewhat opposed to this war between the righteous and evil sects. In the last war between the righteous and evil sects, it was Ning Xuanji who took action and disappeared with Dugu Weiwei. It could be said that they perished together and saved the entire Jianghu. However, the end result was that the true martial sect had declined from its peak, and had never been able to recover. Apart from some reputation, the true martial sect hadn't obtained anything valuable or meaningful. This had made the disciples of the true martial sect feel very wronged and unworthy. In this war between the righteous and evil sects, it was fine if Lu Chenglu took action, but they actually wanted to take action as well. This was even more unworthy. Therefore, during the battle, all the cultivators of the true martial sect didn't fight with their lives on the line. They were all conserving their strength. At this time, when they saw Xing Situ and Lin Feng escape, they thought that the other party's strength was about to be exhausted and they fled because they felt that they couldn't win. This made them more spirited. If they could easily kill two martial Dao grandmasters from the hidden demon clan without paying too much of a price, it was still a worthwhile trade. Therefore, as one chased and the other fled, the two people unconsciously chased after Chu Xiu. At this time, Xing Situ and Lin Feng unleashed all their earth vigor qi at the same time and even burned a little of their qi and blood to unleash their maximum speed. In an instant, they had already shaken off the two people, leaving the two martial Dao grandmasters of the true martial sect stunned. They didn't know what the other party was doing. At this time, Qing Tingshan saw the two people and his eyes lit up. He immediately shouted, "Brothers from the true martial sect, help me stop the devil Chu Xiu." Qing Tingshan was very depressed that 6 people were chasing after one person, but they ended up being fooled by that person. The others were also going crazy. In the past, they had only heard that Chu Xiu's combat strength was outstanding, but they had never heard that he was so talented in escaping. Originally, the people of the true martial sect didn't want to participate in the siege of a devil like Chu Xiu, but since Qing Tingshan had spoken, they couldn't refuse. They could only change their target and kill Chu Xiu. Seeing this scene, a trace of coldness flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes and he looked at Xing Situ with a trace of killing intent. Although he didn't have evidence to prove that the two people were lured here by Xing Situ, this kind of thing didn't need evidence. Chu Xiu really didn't expect Xing Situ to play this game at this time. He was simply courting death. However, this was in line with Xing Situ's character. The people of Jianghu all said that Chu Xiu was crazy and acted abnormally. In fact, Chu Xiu's craziness was only on the surface. When others saw Chu Xiu do something crazy, Chu Xiu would only do it if he had more than 50% confidence. As for the remaining 50%, it was up to fate. Xing Situ was different. He never considered the consequences of his actions, just like his master. Back then, he wanted to forge the 9 Yin and Red Abyss Devil swords. Without any preparation, he began to kill people to forge the swords. In the end, he was chased all over Jianghu. If Chu Xiu had been in this situation, he would have definitely plotted in secret and killed a large number of martial artists from the 5 major sword sects to forge the swords. Then, he would have planned an escape route and calmly escaped. This was the biggest difference between Chu Xiu and Xing Situ. Right now, Xing Situ had suddenly come up with this idea. He had just started a feud with Chu Xiu and now he was up to something. He didn't care about the situation at all. This was clearly Xing Situ's style. In the distance, Xing Situ also saw the murderous look in Chu Xiu's eyes. He couldn't help but sneer. He didn't care at all. So what if he saw it? Both sides were already enemies anyway. Without any evidence, even if Chu Xiu reported this to Wei Shuya, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Lin Fang, who stood next to Xing Situ, was a little nervous. He wasn't Xing Situ, who had Yuan Tianfang's protection. He was a demonic martial artist who was originally a rogue cultivator. It was extremely difficult for him to become a martial Dao grandmaster. Now that he had offended Chu Xiu, it would be troublesome. However, it was Chu Xiu who was in trouble. His heaven's sun gazing at air skill was indeed miraculous. He had been able to escape from the siege of 6 martial Dao grandmasters. Now that there were 2 more people, the pressure on Chu Xiu increased. These 2 people weren't too strong. His heaven's sun gazing at air skill could see through their flaws. The problem was that even though he could see through their flaws, sometimes Chu Xiu couldn't dodge them and could only fight them head-on. The battle here also attracted the attention of many people, and everyone present was shocked. Chu Xiu was really strong. He was fighting against 8 martial artists of the same level. Perhaps even a true fire spirit refinement state expert didn't have this kind of treatment. Seeing the 8 people rushing at Chu Xiu from all directions like an inescapable net, leaving almost no space for Chu Xiu to escape, Chu Xiu's eyes also revealed a fierce murderous intent. The greedy blade appeared in Chu Xiu's hand. Terrifying devil qi and murderous qi were all poured into the greedy blade. An extremely turbulent saber intent surged. It was even more powerful than the saber intent on the greedy blade that could arouse people's greed. As the saber slashed down, the gang energy's saber light instantly drowned everything. It was as if it was tearing the sky and earth apart, carrying the great power of heaven and earth with it. 7 limits sea breaking. The moment the saber slashed out, the greedy blade in Chu Xiu's hand couldn't withstand the powerful force and shattered. It made Chu Xiu's heart ache for 3 breaths. If the weapon was not sturdy enough to perform a martial skill of this level, it would basically be like a consumable. It would shatter every time it was used. At this moment, Qing Tingshan and the other 8 people were fighting against Chu Xiu's sea breaking at the same time. At this time, no one dared to hold back. Everyone attacked with all their strength. Gang energy and sword lights of various attributes burst out one after another. Only then did they barely block Chu Xiu's sea-breaking saber. However, the 2 martial arts practitioners from the true martial sect who were weaker among the 8 of them couldn't withstand the powerful saber intent. They spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Qing Tingshan and the others didn't have it easy either. Although the force was distributed among the 8 of them, his hands were still numb from the shock of the saber. Su Yan and the other 2 from the Great Light Temple were the only ones who were in a better condition. Their physical cultivation was extremely powerful. At this moment, apart from being a little exhausted, they weren't injured. The 8 of them looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of shock in their eyes. If it were anyone else fighting against 8 people, they would only be able to barely withstand it. However, Chu Xiu actually dared to fight back head-on. Moreover, he even repelled all 8 of them. The strength of his strength was terrifying. At this moment, Chu Xiu gathered all the demonic energy around him. Wisps of pitch-black demonic energy surrounded Chu Xiu's body. Even his eyes were dyed pitch black. The terrifying demonic energy in Chu Xiu's hands condensed into a ferocious-looking giant bow. As the bow was knocked, 2 giant demonic energy hands condensed behind Chu Xiu. One of them held the bow, while the other 3 held the bowstring. As the bow was pulled into a full moon, a terrifying aura condensed in the demonic bow. Seeing this, the expressions of Qing Tingshan and the other 8 people changed. They quickly retreated, running as far as they could. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.